Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of TrekPrime. Uh, and we're going to be talking about a subject today that has been germinating in our podcast for at least a couple of weeks, hasn't it?
At least, yeah.
Yeah, usually we have long-term subjects that kind of go along. And to continue a little tradition on this very young podcast, from watching TOS this week, we're going to have to do an episode all about Star Trek and circuits. We really are at this point. I mean, it looks like a TOS focused episode about why they stopped using circuits on starships and why was it a big deal in TOS. But anyway, today's subject Jeff picked out is...
Well, I wanted to talk about how the bridge and the positions on the bridge have changed over the generations that we've watched the show, and possibly... And at the end of that, we can discuss where it could go in the future if they ever try to go back to the prime timeline again. So, I had to write some of this down here so I don't forget.
Oh, yeah, and also ranks that don't exist anymore was another one you mentioned.
What's that?
Ranks that don't exist anymore, positions that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, some that don't exist, and then some that popped up, later years.
Right. So which do you want to start out with, or just kind of intermingle them?
Well, I'll start with the Yeomans.
Okay, Yeomans, yes. TOS era, but not in Enterprise. I didn't see any Yeomans in Enterprise.
No, that's right. They didn't really. But, I didn't really try to bring Enterprise into it because apparently Enterprise is sort of like the first deep space exploration ship. So we kind of...
Yeah, pre-Federation, so...
Yeah, it was like, they're trying to learn things as they went along before they finalized, before they established what positions they needed. They were just kind of feeling it out, to see how it worked. But so I started a lot with just TOS, but if you want, we can mention Enterprise in there.
Okay, well, so, TOS, that's a good framework. Now, obviously, TOS had a number of
Yeomans, yeah.
Yeomans. The most famous was Janice Rand, who appeared in a little small chunk of season 1, if I remember, like the first half of it, basically.
Yeah, she was.
I think 1966.
She didn't even do the full season, if I recall. She wasn't in the full season, the first season.
Right, and after her, I remember there was another one, Tina Barrows, and she was in a one-episode Yeoman and had a pretty beefy role. She was sort of Bones' girlfriend, I think.
Yeah, it was implied it. I don't know. It was like Bones was kind of hitting on her a little bit, but
right. And she was on that shore leave planet, and she had this encounter with Don Juan, and she got to dress up like Maid Marian, basically. So, and she had all this history, and then poof, Tina Barrows is gone. Never see her again.
Yeah, that's right. So,
and then we have another one I believe we didn't see again on Taste of Armageddon, named Yeoman Tamara.
Yeah. And
she was asked to guard one of the Armenians, Amia 3, and Kirk asked her to... Oh, Spock, I'm sorry, asked her to sit on her if she had to.
Let's not go too far into that.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek had some interesting dialogue at that time. Yeah. But I'm just saying, just to get interesting. But Tamara never appeared again. She was a one... And, of course... I have to mention this about Yeomans. They all seem to be red shirt people.
Yeah. I guess it went with the position,
Yeah, because they were sort of command assistants.
Yeah, I call them like captain's secretaries or something like that.
Right, like clerical people.
Yeah, they do all the small work.
Right, and also apparently bring them food occasionally or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or your morning
dog. The primary job is to make sure the captain is performing at his optimum, and so they help assist in that.
And I guess we have to discuss the Cage, because the Cage introduced the concept of the Yeoman in, I believe it was Yeoman Cult.
Yeah.
Who was later implied through the Telosians had something of a crush on Pike.
Yeah, that's right.
But wasn't expressing it because she was shy, I guess. And Pike also implied that Starfleet utilized male Yeomans because he didn't want a female Yeoman on the ship, apparently.
And I remember her uniform was gold, like the captain's.
Right, she had the gold captain's uniform like Pike did. So
they changed that, yeah. So in Next Generation, I think what they did with the Yeomans is they the computer took over that role.
Uh-huh.
Because for the first time, we see the captain has a ready room, and in that ready room, he has a computer, a laptop, basically. And with that, the computer actually takes care of all those functions, hands him his reports, gives him his information, and he's got a replicator so he can get his own food, and he can do all this stuff. And it's basically a place for the captain to be when he's not needed on the bridge, where Kirk always had to be on the bridge. And so everything had to come to him, and he needed people on feet, to go and do it. But with the new bridge on the Next Generation, that job was taken away and given to the computer to give to the captain. So I think that's how that's why that position doesn't appear anymore. Next year.
There's another position I think we discussed that we never saw in the later episodes again, and that was Commodore.
Yeah, I was going to get to that one. But before that, there was another position that disappeared. Communications officer.
Yeah, they kind of integrated that with ops and
ops or tactical. It was like
different things. Like obviously Worf and Tasha Yar on the Next Generation did that, and they were tactical. Harry Kim did that, and he was ops. I think he was the ops.
Yeah.
And
and that's another point, because science officer was integrated into ops as well. That's
right, because of Dax. Was she a science officer? And she was she was O'Brien was ops on Deep Space Nine, but she kind of took over communications too. Yeah,
but on the station it was different, because the station wasn't Federation built, so apparently the science officer position was probably needed. Because I don't think she had a staff. As far as I remember, she was really working alone.
Well, so, most of them were. I didn't, but I had a staff, but he's security, so that makes sense.
But on the starships, they had science stations, but they didn't have a chief science officer that was the head of the science department.
Right.
So it was everybody's job just to be a science officer, and
That's it. That's what initiated it last week. We were talking about how Spock doubled up. He was the first officer and the science officer.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live. New shimmers of floor wax and a dessert topping. That was kind of Spock. He was kind of two things. And, because he's Vulcan and very logical, I imagine, so basically I see him as being the first officer standing next to Kirk, and then I have to go to science officer mode, so I'll go stare into my little blue thing over in the corner, because that's my science stuff,
Because Vulcans can do more work. They don't need as much sleep, so they can be loaded with more responsibility.
Right, they can obviously multitask because it's logical. So, but anyway, like I said, and in the future, I noticed that the Enterprise D didn't really have a proper science officer per se. They had revolving door ones.
That's right. Yeah, it was just people coming up on the bridge, and you see them in the background, but they never really had any lines or anything like that.
Right, they weren't big people.
Yeah. So when it came to asking, specific data, that would come from commander data, who would relay scientific information from his ops station, or from tactical. Worf would sometimes give scientific data from his station, so it was kind of spread around a little bit. Everybody was tied in.
Yeah, and ditto Voyager, kind of the same idea.
Yeah, because I remember there was lines Tuvok gave that discussed science and stuff, and that was from his tactical station, and then Harry Kim would kind of chime in with him. So,
right. So they would kind of consult and kind of have science consulting positions, but they were no distinct science officers. Which is interesting, because you would have thought that a character like Samantha Wildman would have taken that role.
Yeah.
Because she was a science officer, sort of, but she kind of took a back seat and became an officer / mother to Naomi. But she could have easily been a science officer type.
Yeah, even a 7 to 9 could have filled that role.
Right, because she had the astrometrics lab, and she was doing a lot of sciencey stuff. Just astrometric charts.
Perfect for that job. If they needed a science officer, she could have been the one to do it.
And I don't even know what 7 of 9 really was. She wasn't per se a crew member. She was more like a default. She just seemed to be astrometrics chief. Sometimes other stuff.
She kind of was into a little bit of everything.
Chips Borg, I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes she helped out in engineering and.
Right, she just kind of was a Renaissance character. She was kind of everywhere on the ship. She was in astrometrics, and she was on the bridge sometimes, if I recall, too.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah, she was the product of assimilation of many Starfleet people that was still in her knowledge. You know what I'm saying? She knew things. I remember when they found the Omega particle, and she knew all about what that sign.
Yeah, because the Borg had tried to assimilate the Omega particle.
She remembered that when they were assimilated, these captains, that information came with it.
So 7 of 9, I guess, is the character that really has no per se position. She's just wherever she needs to be.
Yeah. It's almost like having a queue on the ship. What job could we
right. Because when that Q was going to commit suicide by becoming human, they said we could close on every department with any position we give him.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so, yeah, she just had a lot of knowledge, so it's like, well, we'll put you wherever you're needed at the given moment, because you could basically take over this whole ship. Yeah. Didn't she kind of have to stay up with I think it was the Doctor in one episode where they had to be put in hibernation because of this nebula?
Yeah, all that.
And she could basically do everything on the ship, basically, and kind of keep things going.
Yeah, she was one. I think it was just her, wasn't it, that was left
right.
out of it?
Basically, she's the opposite of another character. I don't know if you're ready to get into this from the Next Generation, the counselor position.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but I just wanted to get into the counselor thing, because that was something I was thinking a lot about. In TOS, Bones is more or less the Doctor/counselor.
Well, okay, let's see.
Not counselor by degree.
But they knew each other beforehand, though. That they had a friendship that went beyond the 5-year mission. That he kind of knew him a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah. So maybe it was a friendship, that they had together just for him as captain. But I don't know if people even have seen Star Trek Continues or even consider it canon. But they did introduce a counselor in a program that Starfleet began as a test program to see how well it would work by having a chief psychiatrist to monitor the crew's, emotional fitness.
Right. Well, they sort of hinted at that in the second Star Trek pilot with Elizabeth Daner.
Yeah.
I
think she was just a guest on the ship.
Right, but that could have been hinting at the stirrings of a counselor position.
Yeah.
Because she was sort of analyzing the crew in that, but like I said, she could have easily been inserted in there as a ship's counselor if they wanted to keep her on.
Yeah.
I mean...
of course, and it was good that, in Star Trek Continues, they showed a certain resentment having her there at first, because they, people don't like to talk about their feelings and what strangers or something like that to get that intimate. So everybody was kind of trying to avoid her. But after a while, they start to see that, she does contribute more than just, talking to people about their feelings. She can also help to analyze aliens' mental state and help them with how to deal with them a lot better. So I think at the end of that, they probably felt that it was working, and years later they started introducing ship's counselors on Starship.
Well, I wanted to get to this, and I don't know why this ended up happening, but I've noticed a lot of Star Trek fans now consider Deanna Troi kind of semi-useless, and the reason is because in Star Trek, you have all these Renaissance characters. They can jump from station to station. And when they put Troi in a command position, she really can't do it well.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like she's just a counselor.
Well, the problem with her character was, that she was a betazoid. That was one thing, and she had these other abilities. But if she was just a counselor all the time, I mean, the stories would kind of get kind of boring. They were kind of
just the one-trick pony position, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for characters that were more, that would get people interested more, and she comes off as the kind of daytime soap opera kind of character where, you got Worf and Riker and the other and Data, and they're sort of like the, the evening time, the A-team or something like that, and so she kind of was like the other end of the spectrum where people really weren't interested in that part.
That's probably why she wanted to leave in the first season. She didn't feel that she had much to do.
Yeah, I mean, her character really didn't have a whole lot to do, so that's why they started getting her involved with like ship bridge duties and stuff like that.
Right. Now, one thing that was good, if they had a situation like in The Defector, where they had a defector come onto the ship, she could kind of, moderate that and see if he was for real. So that was a good thing. Now, speaking of ship's counselors, the one series I think needed a ship's counselor above all of them didn't get one until the final season, Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I mean, just to me, you have these contentious people on this ship. I would have put a ship's counselor on that place quick.
Yeah, I mean, and just one is not enough. I mean, she had to have.
They should have had a staff of people. You know, on that ship, you have Kira over here and everything. You have Odo and my goodness, and everybody. And then you have Opaka and Wynn and all these characters.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
This requires a psychiatric staff.
Yeah, and
3 for Wynn. 3 for Wynn, but.
Yeah, and that's a wonder they never really had that. I mean, they went so far with it with Next Generation. I think into their 5th season, and then they did the DS9 spinoff.
And of course, if you know the Deep Space Nine trope that O'Brien must suffer, he really needed one because they were putting him in the worst positions on that show.
I know it.
So they really needed somebody there. And interestingly enough, they picked this Dax, who's just getting used to being a joint trill.
Yeah.
But she's still a counselor, so she's helping herself while trying to help other people. So I think, of course, Deep Space Nine was the opposite of Gene Roddenberry's vision. It's instead of having no conflict among characters, let's have nothing but conflict.
Yeah.
Let's put in conflicted characters, having conflict with other people, and just mess. But anyway, so yeah, Deep Space Nine. Now, Voyager didn't have one, but I get it. They weren't meant to go on an extended mission. That was supposed to be a quick thing.
Yeah, I don't think they were intended to stay out in space.
So they had Neelix in kind of a made-up rank, morale officer.
Yeah, that was kind of like his duty to talk to people.
Yeah, but it was a made-up rank. I don't think there's an official position.
It was sort of like Guinan, but at a different.
Right, but I mean, Picard didn't say, "I declare the Guinan morale officer." He was a bartender.
I mean, she kind of would be, but she wasn't. Yeah, like you said, officially labeled the rank.
So that was just Janeway's made-up thing to give Neelix his place on the ship. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't think it's an official Starfleet rank, morale officer, junior grade, or anything like that. I think it's just something they made up. Yeah. Now, there's another rank. Is there another rank you wanted to mention before we get into the Commodore thing?
Well, yeah, actually, I was going to go into that right now. The Commodores.
Oh, yeah.
We had a plethora of Commodores.
TOS was full of them. Commodore Wesley, Commodore Stone, and all these people.
Yeah, Stalker. Yeah,
Stalker, another one. Like all these Commodores, and they were on these bases, and they seemed to be kind of half admiral. I mean, I know that in the naval tradition, there are Commodores, but
they were sort of like, as part of the flag officer rank, they were at the bottom. Okay, and they were adjutant with admirals, the rear admirals, which was the next level up. But there was also another rank that came with called fleet captain, which
I was going to mention the fleet captains too.
Almost the same duties as the Commodore, but even on TOS there wasn't a whole lot mentioned about fleet captain, except for Fleet Captain Pike, who was given that rank just to honor him and not because they didn't want to retire him, after what he had done to save all those people, and he got himself hurt and he ended up in a wheelchair or whatever that was.
Right.
So they gave him that rank as an honorary rank and kept him on duty. But the Commodore ranks, what we got from TOS was that Commodores were given the duty of either being in charge of a station or a colony, or they were given command of a fleet of ships. And that was their position. The admirals, we'd only see them on like communiques and stuff like that. They really weren't out there on the field doing things like that. So I think that was left to the Commodores. Now, when we went into the Next Generation era, we didn't really see any Commodores. Now, it was mentioned in Memory Alpha online that there was a Commodore in the episode Conspiracy. I watched the episode. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't remember Commodores in that. I remember a bunch of admirals.
Yeah, it was just it was 3 admirals and a bunch of
captains.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Maybe somebody was screwed up. Then somebody should tell Memory Alpha to watch that episode.
Now, I remember. Do you remember the Commodore's name they listed in that, or was it just somebody was Commodore?
It just said there was a Commodore. They didn't say by name, but I didn't see it.
No, I don't remember. I would remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, but in Deep Space Nine, and this is something I wanted to cover, I don't know if captains generally have this authority, but...
So when we did a Next Generation, I remember there was an episode where they were dealing with Romulans or something, and they needed to make a blockade. And they gave Captain Picard the command of the fleet. Now, in Voyager, we find out why that is because they have a regulation where if there's more than one ship and there's no Commodore or admirals or whatever that would take the fleet, it was the duty of the captain with the highest tactical advantage, his ship with the highest tactical advantage, to take command of the fleet. That means his ship If he's got more
Okay.
firepower or whatever, has to take command of the smaller ships. So in Voyager, when we saw Equinox, remember that issue had come up between her and Captain Branson.
Right.
And they asked, well, what's the regulation on that? And she looked it up and said that, the captain whose ship has the highest tactical advantage is the one in command of the fleet. So her order would have to be over his. So that's why that was going on. So they eliminated fleet captain and Commodore, and they wrote a regulation in there to give command to the captain that has the best ship, essentially.
Well, that kind of anticipates the question I was going to ask about Deep Space Nine, because during the Dominion War, Cisco was commanding an entire Federation fleet. So, I mean, even though they had captains, he was sort of commanding them to go on specific.
But he was given that authority by
right. They gave him that authority to do that.
So that wasn't
that answered that.
Yeah. So when he got the command from an admiral that he was in charge of it, apparently the admiral felt that he would be better suited to command the fleet because maybe he knew something that they didn't know. So
to bring it all down on this end of the topic, do you think that the reason why some Starfleet ranks just disappeared over the years was because they found better ways to do those same things with different?
It was for efficiency. It was for efficiency.
Exactly.
It's like, why get people to do this job when you can have one person do it, or you can get a computer to do it?
Or the computer doing what the Yeoman used to do.
Yeah. So it was a reflection on our times today, where you're seeing this happening now, where like in the factories where you got machines building your cars instead of 200-300 people lined up on a line to put parts, bolts, and stuff in there. Now machines are doing that for you, and that saves the company lots of money by not having to pay wages and stuff like that.
Right. And in the Star Trek universe, since the issue is not money but allocation of resources.
Yeah.
Right. they'd want an improvement. They would want, say, a first officer to be the most efficient first officer they could be, rather than have to double up as a science officer, or have maybe a yeoman who may have had more of a command instinct to, because on the Excelsior, Rand became a communications officer.
Yeah.
So you get to wonder if the yeoman thing was kind of sort of over by then, or an intermediary step to a higher level.
Well, it must have been because Rand later became was a commander on the Excelsior.
Right.
Wasn't she the first officer?
I'm not going to count. She was a communications officer on, I believe, Excelsior, and she was a Starfleet too, in some position like that.
Yeah.
And she was also a transporter on the motion picture, so I don't know if she was a yeoman then. I don't know when the yeoman thing stopped. I didn't see them in the motion picture.
I think there was somebody that shows up on the bridge that we know was a yeoman, but they never.
Right. So maybe they were kind of phasing it out during that time. I don't know. But I didn't see yeomans in most of the movies.
It seemed like like a pointless thing, to bring into the next
generation. This is another possible subject in the future, even though it's a really sideline thing.
Yeah.
In the Gold Key original Star Trek comics, which you've been talking about a lot lately, Yeoman Rand was sent on instant away missions with these giant phaser rifles, killing monsters, which he was not doing in TOS. So.
Yeah.
Gold Key is loosely involved in the Prime universe, but it's comic book stuff, so it's...
Yeah.
We'll get into Gold Key another time. I just mentioned that as a reference where they have Rand as the impossible yeoman who has these giant phaser rifles and with monsters. Like, okay, I'm a yeoman on the ship, but on the planet, I'm action! Really, so... Whatever. But... no. Are there any other positions you could think of other than fleet captain, commodore, yeoman,
I think we dropped a few admiral ranks. I think in Next Generation they just have admiral. They don't have. I think they might have had a rear admiral or something like that. But I think they skipped or they dropped an admiral rank in there somewhere. And I was trying to figure out.
Was it fleet admiral?
It might have been fleet admiral. I don't know, but there was an admiral rank that they dropped in Next Generation. Which kind of makes sense because, why have all these admirals? I mean, basically, they're all doing the same thing.
Right. Here's another question for you. I remember in the TOS, especially again, we're going to go a little off Prime again into sort of non-canon Prime. I don't know if you know what you call it. In the FASA universe, in the RPG universe, they talked about TOS era still. They talked about positions like petty officers. Cheap petty officers. And I believe in TOS they mentioned some petty officers.
Those are your non-commissioned officers.
Enlisted.
They give them rank, and whatever, you go on Memory Alpha, and they show these rank pins you never see that are given to just the crewmen on the ship.
So
Officers.
would these be kind of like the Enterprise and the Enterprise A's lower decks type people?
Well, they do like a lot of this, the regular work that, the officers are in charge of the responsibility of running, the bridge and all that, and the subordinates are basically your what we call the NCOs, which is your non-commissioned officers, and they do the labor work, the maintenance, and they some of them will probably do some of the computer work for somebody else. Like if an officer asks them to do something for them, they're given that task.
Well,
and you'd find some in the medical field where you have nurses or something like that.
Right. In TOS, there are all these people you'd see. It looked like there was a ladder. I think they called it a gangway. You'd crawl up, and they'd come out and they'd be repairing these big bulky things all over the Connie. And they weren't wearing Starfleet uniform. They sometimes wore red or gold kind of smocks with black things underneath them. Do you think those were these non-commissioned officers?
Well, yeah, they could have been. The thing about it is they used those, but they didn't. I don't even think they had the emblems.
Right, they just wore those smocks, if I remember.
It was just that, and we saw them being used on a starbase. Some of the people. So yeah, I mean, it could be easily said that they were, non-commissioned officers.
And in the Next Generation, they had people like that too. Only they wore kind of like just very plain orange jumpsuits. Well,
this is the thing about Next Generation. They brought Chief O'Brien in the Next Generation, and he was an officer because he had pips. Now, if you're wearing pips, that means you're an officer rank.
Wasn't he a junior lieutenant or something?
Yeah, it was something like that. And I think they gave him a lieutenant rank when he was a transporter chief. And then all of a sudden we find out that because he's transporter chief, that maybe they should just knock him down off of that officer ladder down all the way to just the chief non-commissioned officer or something like that. So his rank was kind of confusing for a while until Deep Space Nine, where they actually kind of established that he wasn't an officer, that he was just
right. And he wore this very strange rank pip in Deep Space Nine. Eventually, it was like a little square with all kinds of.
Yeah, eventually they did make a rank for him that you never seen at any other point, and that's an NCO rank.
And he often called himself an enlisted man. That's how he described himself.
Yeah, enlisted. Yeah,
but not an officer level person.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a lower rank that I guess that they just kind of evolved, but they didn't really go into, because you said in the manuals they had these little pins we didn't see. So
yeah. It goes all the way back to the TOS era where they supposedly had a rank for the NCOs, but
right, because TOS had the little rings around the collar for rank.
No, they don't. Only the officers wore the rings on the collars. The NCOs didn't have any of that. It was something that they wore on their.
Yeah, and the NCOs, did they wear actual Starfleet uniforms or just those smocks? I never really saw.
I think that might have been a uniform variant for NCOs or something.
They didn't wear rank insignias, so
no. So I guess you're just supposed to know what rank they are,
Right. Or maybe they have some little pin we don't see. I don't know. We didn't see the close up of every TOS character, so
yeah. I mean, clearly all the main characters are going to be your focus, and anybody else is just background. So
now in the movie era, they all kind of have those big, kind of very general-looking uniforms. But remember all the pins they had to wear?
Oh, you're talking about like Star Trek 2?
Yeah, tons of pins. Pins here, pins over there.
Kirk's sitting there fighting with David, and you see the pins flying off his
Yeah, the pins coming down because he's had a million of them.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, you could set off every metal detector in the world, just walk. I mean, what the hell? Why all the pins? And then it got worse when they had the Colonel West, remember, in Star Trek 6, and he had the...
Oh, he had the Admiral stuff with all the little...
I mean, that was the only time we ever saw them putting actual ribbons.
I wonder if that was Nicholas Meyer's doing, because he is a known man who's obsessed with the look of naval rank.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted to have all the characters just like, we'll put all these clusters and pins on them. I mean, remember how Data had and Kirk had those big things of their awards?
Yeah, he kept them in a box.
What if these people decided we're going to get these Star Trek Sergeant Pepper outfits and just pin all the stuff to our uniform when we're working?
Yeah, especially when they were just wearing these shirts, like what I've got on. I mean, that would have gone, oh.
Okay, what five?
Yeah, I mean, talk about ripping your shirt. That would have happened.
Pin on. Yeah, Wesley had this giant square thing with these admiral things on it.
Yeah.
It was just slapped on that uniform with all these other pins and pins and pins. And can he walk?
See, the thing that I got from Next Generation is that rank isn't so important. They don't
exactly. It's more what you do.
Yeah, it's not displayed where the world can see it like they did in the other versions of Star Trek. It's just subtle,
Right. You didn't have Picard with 4 rank pips with a little neon light saying, I'm a captain, I'm a captain. You didn't see anything like that.
They know who the captain is. They know they recognize him.
Like he doesn't need all those big pins everywhere.
It doesn't have to be labeled on him. The crew knows who the captain is. So they're kind of pulling away a little bit on this big rank recognition kind of thing where, even in today's military, you see this happening in today's military. You see, when I was in there, the NCO ranks were getting shifted around where they condensed some of the smaller ranks together and abolished a few of the ranks. And they also changed the uniforms and the pins that they were wearing for some of the officers. So, I mean, it was like you see that going on then, and it still goes on even in the Star Trek.
Right, so it's parallel to our world, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is going to go to where I think it's going to go if they do a Star Trek in the future in the prime timeline.
Like the next generation?
Yeah. I think what we're going to see is the rank of captain is going to just disappear. And what will happen is a commander will be called captain, but he's actually in charge of the ship.
It's funny you mentioned that because Deep Space Nine sort of toyed a little bit with that. Yeah. Because Commander Sisko wasn't a subordinate to Kira. He was kind of the captain or whatever of the station.
Well, technically, him and Kira were the same rank. Even she was a major, but that's equivalent to...
Right. Well, she was part of the Bajoran militia, so she wasn't Starfleet, obviously. But the thing is that they were the same rank. But maybe it was more like Sisko handled the Federation stuff, she handled the Bajoran stuff.
That's right. That's right.
So when Sisko became a captain, do you think Kira sort of had to answer to him more?
I think it was the same. But, when she became colonel,
later in the show.
That made her the same as far as, because they were using the rank that the Marines and the Army uses for the Bajorans, militia like her, major, colonel, general, and all that. Okay, and Starfleet uses the naval rank, of admiral, commodore, commander, lieutenant. But if you look on a chart that shows the ranks together, you see that they're equal in the same. They just have a different name.
Right. So that's why when Sisko went off to be with the wormhole alien prophets, whatever,
when you look at naval officers,
Kira took over the ship because she was the station because she was a colonel and she had that ability.
When you look at naval officers that command ships, their rank is a colonel and they're called captain. Even though they got the bird symbol, which is a colonel, they're called the captain because that's his job. He is the captain of the ship.
Right. That's why, because obviously, even though Star Trek is based on the naval thing, they never had Colonel Kirk or Colonel Picard.
That's right. So I think what will happen is, the rank of captain will be like there's no reason to have it because what we can do is just have a commander and say you're the captain of the ship, and the crew will call him captain accordingly, even though he just has the command rank. And so they'll skip captain and go right into the admiral ranks when they get promoted. They'll skip that and just move up to that. And what happens, your first officer will probably be a lieutenant commander, and you'll have a whole bunch of lieutenant commanders under him that answer to him, but he's going to be the first officer.
One thing about the future, too, is that they could get rid of some of the junior rank kind of things. Like, in the Next Generation, they even had some, like, ensign, lieutenant, junior grade. I don't per se see why they would really need those so much anymore.
Yeah, because even when they got into, like, junior lieutenant, they were still treated like an ensign in a way. They were still learning the ropes pretty much. So I think what they'll do is they'll probably get rid of the ensign rank and they'll have a different pin that designates.
And back to kind of Wesley again. I know Wesley could be a whole topic.
Yeah.
Good and not so good. I'm not going to blame Wesley because there were some issues, but going with the morale officer, I'm really convinced the acting ensign was a made-up thing of Picard's.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see any acting ensigns on any other starships.
That rank meant as much as the ranks that Janeway was given to the Maquis crew aboard the ship. It was just it was only official on the ship.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Janeway gave the Maquis ranks. Were those also kind of made up ranks if they weren't?
They call those provisional ranks, provisional by the captain, which means that authority only extends from the captain on that ship.
But like I said, an acting ensign, acting almost means like you're a quasi ensign, you're a semi ensign. You're
a pretend ensign. That's what
it's like you're getting an order from Dr. Evil. It's like, you're a semi-ensign, just 1 calorie. You're not quite an ensign. Why don't they just say you're an ensign, but an acting one, and just call you an ensign as an acting ensign?
That's the thing is that, why give him the duties of an officer when you want to start a kid that his age and learning how to be on a starship? You start him at the lowest rank, crewman. Say he's an acting crewman.
Well, maybe they figured crewman crusher wouldn't sound as good as acting ensign.
Yeah, it sounds more officious that way. But
there's a made-up thing of Picard, is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lame attempt to try to make him more important a character.
And then give him some silly discount Starfleet sweater.
Sweater, yeah, that says on the front.
Okay, so it's Star Trek. We're going to give you an exhibition and put a Cosby sweater on you. It looks kind of Starfleet, but it isn't. And then a year later, we'll give you some gray thing with a fake silver communicator with no gold on it.
Yeah.
So it's like they kind of halfway did it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I look back at Wesley when he's leading the scientific team in Pen Pals, and he's saying, I don't want to do a halfway job, I think, well, good, you're not doing this halfway job the crew did on you.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have just been a crew person, started out as like a regular, like an office boy, like they'll have a father or whatever will run a company, and they'll have his son come in and do, kind of secretarial work or watch or whatever, or be like an assistant. He's not going to say, well, you're an acting boss, and slaps him like saying, I'm running a company. I'm going to put you in a position, but you're not exactly my assistant, but you're an acting assistant, and I'll put you in one of those T-shirts with a tuxedo painted on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they were saying that if I tell you you're an acting ensign, that means you know how to be an ensign.
Right, that was some made up stuff. Now that I think about it,
it didn't make any sense because Wesley was given a really an important task on how to deal with the planet.
Yeah, he's learning the ship and he's doing these mission things with them.
Yeah, and just because all his people that he was responsible for knew their job, that doesn't mean that he knew his job. And he's just like, it's like you're working at a job and this boss is a kid. And the kid was given the authority by the boss, his father, and he says, okay, you're the boss for today. And whatever the kid tells you, you got to do. I mean, how many people are going to do that? And really?
Right. I mean, so Wesley, maybe he was trying to get out of his undignified position, but, but like I said, if they wanted to make him an ensign, they slapped the uniform on him anyway, which is a little weird, but
yeah,
I don't think Picard really had the authority to do that per se, but anyway, that's a Wesley topic. We can get into that another time, but anyway, if you
I had some other ones.
You covered some any more ranks you got to cover?
There was. I think there won't be any chief engineers.
Really, in the future, you'll think there'll be chief engineers?
Yeah, because actually, Gene Roddenberry had before Next Generation started, he didn't want there to be a chief engineer on the Enterprise. What he wanted was just a maintenance crew, a maintenance team, rather.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
In TOS, if Kirk wanted to go warp 6 or whatever, Sulu would have to initiate it. Mm-hmm. But Scotty had to do something in engineering to make it happen. I can give you warp 6 or I can give you warp 7. There was something he had to do.
Yeah.
He had to start up engines.
Yeah.
Did Jordan have to do anything like that?
Well, they made him do it later. When they made him chief engineer, they started giving him the same kind of duties that we saw on TOS. But Roddenberry, I think, initially envisioned that there wouldn't be anybody in engineering. It would be mostly computer run, And if there was a problem,
right, yeah, which they kind of sort of did anyway, but
yeah.
I guess they just had the idea of liking the position that, because if it's all remote by the next generation, they don't really need somebody to activate something.
And if there was a problem, a physical problem, they would have a maintenance team go down there and fix it, and that would be it.
Like a literal maintenance engineer, not a janitor using a cover name, but actually a real maintenance engineer who was, you know.
Yeah, their job would be like, somebody's repairing, a wall that fell down or something
that. Kind of what O'Brien ended up sort of doing, I mean.
Yeah, and O'Brien, that was weird how they, he seemed like the jack of all trades,
he was sort of more of a handyman on Deep Space Nine than anything.
He did everything. I mean, you look at his career and follow it, and I mean, this guy was into everything on Star Trek.
But, I mean, he really wasn't like a focused commander. He was just sort of, what did they say? There was a mirror version of O'Brien, and the mirror Kira had a really good name for the regular O'Brien, fixer of broken things.
Yeah.
That's more or less what he does. It's broken, we'll get O'Brien to do something with it.
Yeah.
Even kick a control panel to make the transporter work, whatever,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did everything.
But like I said, the chief engineer rank, it was pretty superfluous by Next Generation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it almost was. I mean, because the things that they had Geordi do with engineering could have been done on the bridge.
Right, because with B'Elanna, I thought, oh, come on, do you really need her down there? Because they're making all this fuss that, well, we need an engineer. I would figure by Voyager it was totally remote.
Yeah, I mean, even a lower-ranking officer could have done those jobs that she was doing. I mean, because they had the computer to give them the information if they need to, refresh their memory or something on how to fix something. All the data was right there.
So the chief engineer position, that was sort of being phased out anyway, so I can see them really going that way in the future.
Tactical officer is another position that would go away because, again, the computer is more efficient with that than a person. All you do is program the computer on battle tactics, and you just tell the computer what battle tactic you want to use, and the computer executes it. They'll deploy the weapons in a more efficient way.
So you think in Star Trek's future they'll have really small crews on bridges?
Yeah, bridges are going to be significantly different. They're not going to be what we see now. And they played around with that in TOS with the M5, where the ships were totally automated. And I think what will happen is they'll go back to that computer kind of thinking, and they're going to actually make it work this time.
Well, the interesting thing about that thing you mentioned, though, with computers, is that, Star Trek has this thing where they don't want to take too much humanity out of it.
Well, it doesn't have to be taken away. It becomes sort of like, how can I say it? I mean, we saw that there's a lot of technology in Next Generation, but there's still a lot of humanity in the ship itself, with people dealing with each other, dealing with outside problems. They just have the better tools to fix these problems. I
think another rank, well, it's not really a rank, it's more of a position, I guess. It's a position. Yeah. Was when they created the emergency medical hologram. Now, that could theoretically replace the position of an assistant nurse or a second doctor.
Yeah, if a problem comes up, yeah.
Right, and we had an EMH lead, one of these EMHs leading in the series. And speaking of Voyager, I wanted to mention another thing. They kind of eliminated Helm, didn't they? They kind of...
The other thing I was going to say, in the future, there won't be a helm or navigation. The computer will take care of that.
Yeah, Tom Paris kind of just did all that stuff and it automated it or whatever.
Yeah, you just tell the computer where you want to go, and it'll know how to program that.
So they were already kind of doing that. They were kind of condensing positions.
Yeah.
What they can even do is this. They could have a front panel like they did in the old series where they have two positions, have one be that helm/navigator figure, and have the other side be like a totally science thing.
Yeah.
Like a totally science thing.
It could be condensed into one panel.
I don't know if first officer would be necessary in the future either. They may need one of them. I'm not sure.
Well, that's why I say they'd probably get rid of the captain rank, because I think right there that would be a rank not needed. Because
they could have the commander being the captain.
Yeah. And
they may have a lieutenant commander being exact somehow.
Yeah. I mean, the lieutenant commanders would be in charge of divisions on the ship. But really, the commander would really be the only one needed on the bridge, because he would consult with the computer a lot of times to do things that the ship needed to do.
So
everybody else would be taking care of this.
So those are good possible future directions for Star Trek to go into. Yeah. But you mentioned the bridge, and that was another topic you wanted to get into, bridge position.
Yeah. And, there wouldn't be any transporter rooms. You could beam from anywhere on the ship to anywhere you want. Why have a transporter room? Why a medium? The system would be
right. Like, or even better, have transporter alcoves in parts of the ship rather than a room.
Well, no, you would because they were doing it on Next Generation. Remember, they would.
Oh yeah, the site to site. Yeah.
Yeah, just beam them directly to the bridge, and they, there was no need for a point to beam on. There was no need for a pad. It would just beam them and drop them off anywhere on the ship.
I don't know if holodecks would be necessary either, because I'm sure they have holo emitters on most of the ships. So.
Yeah, I mean, they could change the bridge around to whatever they want it to look, for whatever they need it for. If an emergency comes up, then the bridge would change its look around, so that way it was more combat ready or something like that, or it would give more people access to the
I think if they do a Star Trek like that, I think Star Trek's going to have a big higher budget in the future. Changing bridges and
the thing about movies is this. I mean, they're always making things cheaper to do. CGI is proving that right now.
Right, CGI, you can probably do more of that kind of stuff.
It was really expensive in its early years, but today it's a lot less expensive.
Well, the bridge, it might have to be a physical set more. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't really need that.
But anyway, so in terms of bridge, you would want to talk about bridge location too, or something to that effect?
You mean where things would be on the bridge?
Yeah, is that one of the topics you wanted to talk about?
Well, yeah. As far as how the bridge itself would look, well, yeah. Any Star Trek fan could be really creative with that. We all know how the bridge looks in TOS and in the movies, and we see it evolve into.
Well, I do want to mention one thing. I noticed that if you look at the outside of the bridge on the TOS, obviously the cage has this huge bridge module, which I don't know if it's big or if the ship is smaller. I don't know.
Stuff with more wires.
Like maybe the bridge is down there, so if something blows up, wires and rocks or whatever come down.
People underneath get buried in wires and cables and everything else.
And don't forget circuits. There's circuits up there.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a series of successful circuits. So wires and circuits. Woo! So anyway, so in the TOS bridge had a turbo shaft, and you could see it right behind. There was a little. Actually, let me get my little Connie out here. The turbo shaft is that little thing back there.
Yep.
So, right, so they just had that turbo lift, and I assume the deck below it would have been where the conference room and all that stuff was.
Yeah.
That little area sitting on top of that little bump below the bridge.
You'd want it to be as close to the bridge as you could get it, So
right. Now, on the next gen, they had this gigantic kind of thing on the bottom of the bridge module that it looked like officers' quarters maybe were in there. But
are you talking about the Enterprise D?
D.
Yeah, the D, okay.
And on the top it had a bridge, but all this other stuff on the side of it, and that was, of course, the ready room, the turbo lift. I assume there was a bathroom on that bridge, because there's a door that nobody knows where it goes.
Yeah, there's a blueprint of it, shows you where they are.
Right. And then there's a little ramp that goes into the conference room in the back.
Yep.
It goes in the back. And another thing about that era, I noticed there's all these extra rooms around it. There's all these extra rooms around the Enterprise D bridge. There's all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the same with Enterprise E? Because it seems the bridge just sits on top of that.
Yeah, I think, they do. Through the movies, you get to see them, where Picard's ready room sort of is in the front next to the view screen, sort of. Instead of on the other side where it was, it's on the opposite side.
Maybe what they did is they compacted everything on the Enterprise E. They just made the module bigger and put everything into it. Because everything was kind of chunky.
Yeah, you got a sense that they did kind of squeeze things in a little bit. Like the bridge to me on the Enterprise E doesn't seem as big as it looked on the Enterprise D. And
they had a lot more in it, though.
They had more panels that were facing forward.
Right. And
the wall.
It seemed to be more of a combat sort of ship, so that seemed to be. And not only that, the Enterprise, I think the Enterprise E might have actually been spaciously bigger, but for one thing, they had a lot of platforms and a lot more control panels. There were a lot more panels on that ship.
Yeah, exactly.
And they didn't shag carpet the whole thing. They did with the Enterprise D. They didn't have this nice carpeting. Now, I
gotta say this: that on the Enterprise Bridge D, the Enterprise D, having a ramp going down. Why maybe they did. Maybe a lot of actors slid down that thing when they were walking, but I can't see wearing dress shoes and walking down a carpeted floor that's at an angle.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's why I used to have this little inner joke that I love the Enterprise D, but it really is the Love Boat or the Ritz-Carlton or the Carnival Cruise.
And to have that big shoe horse panel that got in the way of, of trying to get anywhere near the captain, that was it was nice, but it wasn't. Right.
They were trying to make it look very luxurious somehow, like the big powerful ship. Where the Enterprise E was more of a functional starship. It was just, they were trying to make it functional. Voyager, no carpeting there, but it had a good flow. Basically, Voyager was more the stand-up ship. Where now with Voyager, one thing I like about the Intrepid class, they put this big kind of inverted T on the top. And the bridge is in the middle. It's a little circle in the middle, and there's going to be a ready room over here. There's some other room over there. Everything is kind of...
Wondered why they designed that table that way.
You mean the table in her ready room?
Yeah, that was shaped like a key, or a keyhole, rather.
Oh, God, that weird, with all those weird panels on it, yeah.
Yeah, why they had this big round end and it was like rectangular? I mean, this didn't make it. That shape was really weird to me.
Maybe Voyager just liked everything to look like letters. They had this T shape.
I don't know. I often wondered why they come up with that. I don't know. It didn't seem.
I mean, maybe they were just trying to be creative and it just looked strange. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
You got to presume Data had that holographic interface on the wood-framed Enterprise D conference room. Who knows what they had on Voyager that we didn't see?
Yeah.
I mean, that whole thing, they've done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I mean, what I wonder is why didn't they just slap a holo emitter in there and have the Doctor just appear on the table whenever they wanted him?
Yeah, I mean, they could have put emitters anywhere they wanted him to go. Why just the sickbay and the holodeck?
Like I said, they always have this thing in the first two seasons where you see the Doctor on a viewing screen with this little centrifuge behind him.
Yeah, and then they would shut it off. When he
and they going, why couldn't they just make a little miniature Doctor appear on that table or something?
Yeah, exactly. That would have been funny.
Little mini Doctor or something like. Well, they shrunk him down once. Why didn't they just have little mini Doctor appear there instead of having him on the screen? He's a hologram. You can just appear in the room on an emitter.
I mean, yeah, because they had that communications thing that they were testing around on Deep Space Nine. Remember on the back of the. I mean,
that was really inconvenient. You have this area in the back of the kit with this holo mirror they hardly ever use.
Yeah.
And I never really saw the logic of that, though.
They could have utilized that same concept for the Doctor. Just put one...
Right, that would have been more convenient for a hologram. But why would you, per se, need to see the whole body of somebody on your view screen?
Yeah.
It was like, well, what's the point of that? The view screen is to see who you're talking to. You don't need to see their legs and... whether they're scratching, you don't need to see all that.
They got to listen to people like us. They got to listen to the fans. We have the ideas. We know where things have to go.
Yeah, I know. I think, I don't know. Maybe Star Trek producers think that fans would do to it what they did to Doctor Who. With Doctor Who lore, everybody blames fans for all its problems because they had a lot of fan participation and they feel they messed it up. But I think Star Trek fans wouldn't have the same fights of fancy. I think that they're really devoted to the show being very linear and having.
You got to understand. We've been making ourselves obsessed with Star Trek for 50 years.
Right.
We watched and rewatched. We studied it.
With Star Trek fans, I think they reduce them all down to cosplay. You see a picture of Trekkies, they're people with Vulcan ears and Geordie visors and just
people that work at Paramount. They never did any of that.
Right. Like I said, what about the fans who actually sit down there and just build models and construct props?
Yeah, we know how to.
We don't hear about them. I mean, they're the people that could be advancing the show forward if they just, instead of just alienating us, bring us on the staff. We'll consult with you.
Yeah, just hire some fans.
I mean, how many times have we heard with Star Trek a person coming in saying, well, I'm working on Star Trek now. I never really watched Star Trek before.
Well, and they put this responsibility of continuity on.
Right, it's like, didn't you know anything from Gold Key?
Yeah, you're from Gold Key.
That's what happened. The guy never watched Star Trek. He was, with fire coming out of the engines and Spock with the film and everything.
The ship will run on water.
Right. We'll just put some water into the ship and boil it up and have the steam come out or whatever.
Down the toilet and he's stuck in the pipe and
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, well, I think what needs to happen is I think a fan input forum would be good.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
gotta have that. After 50 years, you gotta have that. You can't just go on a
that
fly.
might be in the future. Who knows? And who
Yeah,
knows? Captain Foley and Trek Yards and you and I may be at the head of the class. I hope so.
yeah.
It would be nice because if you want to get stuff on starships, Foley's your guy.
Yeah.
He,
I mean,
he's
I've heard better ideas from fans on where we can go with Star Trek.
exactly because, like I said, these are people, and I think Foley would agree with us that these are people who've digested the stuff.
Yes,
And spent years imagining ideas.
We know the episodes. We know the lines. We know how things progress. We're obsessed with it. You can't hire anybody better than us.
At least I think they should hire professional people who have at least seen Star Trek. And I don't know if you watch the JJ bonus features, I can't even get through them because they're always talking about we've never seen Star Trek. Well, no wonder it's not Prime. You know anything about it.
Yeah. So to cover their mistakes, they say, "Oh, well, this is an alternate universe."
Well, right, and that's the Doctor Who excuse too. Well, it's wibbly wobbly, tiny. No, you just can't write for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So it's just some people make up things, but like I said, even with FASA, as abstract as they get, they kind of put themselves within the universe to a degree.
Yeah, and
the ships could have worked.
And I still like the ideas they came up with. I still have all those books. And
right. I wondered why they didn't consult with the FASA people and just construct these new ship ideas.
Exactly.
Except there was this giant Klingon tank with this big back.
Yeah.
This little tiny front that I don't know would be functional. A troop transport, I think. I can't remember.
The big body they were.
I believe it was called the Klingon Fat Man, and I can't remember the name of it. Yeah. And it was. I don't know if that would have been a good functional ship, but other than that, I don't know.
But if you explained it logically enough to the Star Trek fan, they could actually comprehend it, and then it would become canon. That's the thing about Star Trek. You have to explain it. They won't accept it until you give them a reason to accept it, and if they find it logical, then it becomes canon.
That's why I like you said, I like those transport freighters in Enterprise. They fit right with the time pretty well.
Yeah, that was pretty good design like that. I like those freighters.
Because they fit with where they would have been, 30, 40 years before NX-01. They fit right about in that place.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it seemed like they knew what they were doing with them. The Nebula-class ship, not too bad. And when they designed the Ambassador-class ship, again, not too bad. Kind of an Excelsior-ish, partially Galaxy-class ship.
Yeah, if they'd have had more money, it probably would have looked a little more different, but they had what they had for money. They did come up with a pretty good design for a mid B and D, sort of thing.
Right. Enterprise B, I don't know why they just didn't make that an Excelsior. They had to put all this other stuff on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they were trying to say that it's more modified than the Excelsior, but do you really have to show it all over the hull that it's better? I mean, you don't have to show on the hull that it's better.
I remember reading fan forums about them complaining. I mean, we're totally talking about bridges here. We're getting off topic, but anyway, they said that the impulse engines on the Excelsior are way too small for a ship. It's like these little tiny things in the back.
It did kind of look small.
So I guess maybe they heard that and said, "Let's make these giant, epic impulse engines."
Why didn't they just take the existing impulse, the manifolds, and just make them bigger?
Right. You don't need to put those giant impulse engines on the back of the saucer.
Instead of adding more onto the saucer, they could have just taken the one that was already there and made it look bigger.
Yes, and then that lip on the primary hull.
Yeah.
That lip that did not need to be there. There was just a vulnerability, as you said. It was only there for the purpose of something that would kill Kirk.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't need
that lip didn't need to be there.
Yeah. I don't know. They must have thought it looked cool, but I didn't see the logic behind it.
It was just a lip. It was just ships don't have lips.
I think what they were trying to do, and this was weird, was they wanted to make it look closer to the Enterprise D. And I'm like, well, you can't do that because you still got the Enterprise C. You can't, you know what I'm saying? You got to make it look more like it's trying to be the Enterprise C than the D because the D didn't come till much later. So why are they trying to advance?
If they wanted to make the Enterprise B look a little different, they could have had it be an Excelsior MK2 Mark II, where instead of having that little tiny deflector dish on the thing, they could have made it bigger.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know why they had to add those strap-on Broussard collectors or whatever they were.
Yeah.
Didn't they have strap-on? Like they were just strapped on the top of the nacelle.
Yeah, it just looked tacked on. I don't know what they did.
Yeah, it looked like they just basically took an Excelsior and then put all this Transformer type stuff on it. It's like it's Optimus Starship,
Yeah.
Like you
But,
just it just transforms into some other ship. I don't know. It just
I mean, like I said, you don't really have to display that the ship looks more advanced. You could just know from what it can do on the inside. You just the bridge itself on the inside look.
Of course, cynically, it might have been just sell a toy.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't look at things cynically, so I don't look at it that way. But to be honest, the Enterprise B, I think if they modified it, they could have made it a little more aesthetically Excelsior. Just kind of change some things, but keep the basic design. I don't think it per se needed those strap-on things on the nacelle, and that lip didn't need to be there.
When they used it on DS9, I think it would have been okay there.
We never saw that ship again, did we? That type of Enterprise, that type of Excelsior.
Yeah, they remember what was it, that episode there where they had to go back to Earth because the founders had blew up something on Earth, and then they had
there's an Enterprise B type ship in that.
Yeah, there is a ship on there that they used the same model, and they used it in that episode.
I wonder why they didn't. Mostly they just use Excelsior classes in those.
Yeah, but that's what they called it, an Excelsior class. But that would have been okay to use that kind of look there, because all the other times we saw an Excelsior class ship, that was the traditional
regular one, yeah.
Yeah, and then we saw a different one. But how can they say that was something modified when we already saw it in the movie Generations? When it was used before that before that episode, it was like a continuity problem there.
I mean, who knows? That may have been a Mark II Excelsior. I don't know. But as far as bridge is concerned, I think we mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. The Excelsior bridge, not the Star Trek 3 version, the Star Trek 6 version, where they had the tactical display right in back of the captain, view screen level.
Yeah.
Not very sound. Not actually a bad bridge design, kind of sort of Enterprise A, but I wouldn't have put all that stuff back there, just me personally.
Yeah, because that's basically what did the Enterprise D in, was that, they were tapped into Geordi's visor and they saw the shield frequency.
Yeah, they tapped into his visor. I mean, Sudo's just giving it away. He's like, yes, please, tap into our ship, it's right here.
There it is. And about how do you program a torpedo to have an explosive yield that has a frequency to penetrate a shield? Wouldn't a phaser or a disruptor blast be more appropriate to penetrate a shield?
Yeah, I suppose it could. Now, if we're talking about bridges, I want to get into the sort of redresses, because we do this a lot in Star Trek. The Enterprise C. Yeah. I was always very disappointed by that bridge. I wanted to see a whole other bridge, but they just redressed the battle bridge, if I remember.
Yeah, they used the budget to really.
And then they have this strange panel in front of the con and ops.
Let me try. Yeah, it was.
It was some strange panel.
Yeah, I don't know what that was for. Of course, when we see the ship, it was kind of all busted up and everything, yeah, there was a weird setup there on that. I think if you go online, I think you could see a picture of the bridge layout of the Enterprise C. Yeah,
it's much more basic. It doesn't look like D. I mean, I don't think the Enterprise C bridge had shag carpeting or.
Yeah, it's more utilitarian. There's nothing nice looking about it.
I think it's more Voyager type. That's the way I look at it. It's like a Voyager looking bridge.
Yeah.
Only a little bigger, maybe. I don't know. It didn't seem that big of a deal.
At the same time, though, we also have to keep in mind that, there's a big gap between the B and the D. And the Enterprise C had to have been around quite a bit. So that means when they first launched the C, it probably didn't look the way we see it in yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah, you can interchange the bridge modules.
Yeah, the nacelles might have been different. The saucer might have looked different. The weapons might have been just your basic ball turrets instead of the phaser strips that they put on there. That might have been something brand new that they just introduced on the C. So it probably went through several modifications before we see it as we see it on yesterday's Enterprise. So the captain originally was a different captain than we see at the end, because she was way too young to have been the captain of that ship for 20-something years, or how long the Enterprise C was around.
We don't know how long the Enterprise B was around either.
Yeah, that's true. That ship had to have been. That's a big gap there that could be explored right there if they wanted to do something.
Right, because they kept the Connie around forever. Yeah. I mean, that was like 40 years old, wasn't it, when they blew it up?
Yeah.
Not even counting the Enterprise A being around for another 15 years.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of Connie Enterprise. So. Yeah, I mean, Enterprise A I consider an adjunct of the original one because they're both Connies. I mean, the Enterprise A is a refit Connie.
That's right.
But anyway, so with the Excelsior, who knows the Enterprise B? That there might have been a modification to that. That might have been around until the 22, I don't know, teens, 20s, and then you had another 15 years of Enterprise C.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, it's a whole different ball game you're dealing with. The Enterprise C might have started out with a bridge that looked a little more like the D. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it would be all posh like that, but it might have had a panel in the back that went over a little bit.
Yeah.
So who knows? Let's go way, 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 way back, past the cage. Enterprise.
We're time travel here.
I'm sorry, because we're talking about bridges here.
Yeah.
The bridge placement, I assume, of Enterprise there's a little, like a golden dome thing. I'm assuming the bridge is pretty much right underneath that on NX-01.
Yeah, kind of like that, yeah.
Now, the bridge on that, they're trying to make it look submarine-like, but as we've discussed many times, they basically put these period Dell monitors all over everything.
Yeah, everywhere.
and they weren't really Dell. They were supposed to be, they had kind of a coup de gramme-y kind of things on them, which I find weird because in TOS, the screen just had little blocks.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they didn't have blocks on the Enterprise NX-01.
They colored them. I remember they colored them, didn't they, after a couple of seasons? So the blocks started to have colors in them because they wanted to make it look like it was progressing towards the TOS look on the bridge where you had all these blinking blocks everywhere around the bridge.
Right.
So, yeah, they started to colorize what you saw on those Dell monitors all over the Enterprise NX-01. So
originally they were kind of whitish, bluish.
Yeah, basically, yeah, just black and white kind of monitors.
Well, what I'm wondering is why didn't those Dell monitors have like these green radar-y sort of things? Because in TOS they didn't have occultograms or anything.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know.
I mean, what you'd do is you'd see this weird. It looked like a life support thing you see in a hospital when the computer was talking, like a level.
Yeah.
And then you'd show some random picture.
I think it was just for the eye candy. It looked cool and it looked like it meant something. Just put it there.
Well, one thing that I have in my head was that some technology designer, not Bill Gates, but some Steve Jobs of the 23rd century, decided that we get all this utilitarian stuff from the 22nd century. I love ancient Americana, like the 60s. So maybe that would explain why, you have people in miniskirts and people with flipped hair and people with buns and these giant bouffants and the idea in the 23rd century was this, they call it retro nouveau.
Yeah.
Which is like...
It happens even today. I mean, you look...
Yeah, people go for that. You see people go for that Elizabethan Renaissance look all the time.
Yeah, I mean, clothes styles, they come and go. You see a repeat of the same styles, every 20 or 30 years.
Right. Now, obviously, an alien dressing up like a 60s go-go dancer, yes,
it seems funny, but at the same time, we're doing that already. I mean, today, girls are wearing stuff that they used to wear.
Well, on Starfleet, it makes sense because I'm just talking about dressing up aliens in the 60s, but that was another thing. But anyway,
yeah.
The thing is with the humans dressed as that it kind of be like a movement.
I mean,
who knows? Maybe the bridge control panels on TOS actually had those occultograms in them. We just didn't see them.
Yeah. We don't know what those controls actually did. It just, I mean, remember they were showing, they had the anniversary episode on Deep Space Nine for Star Trek, and they did the Tribble thing all over again.
Right.
And you see Cisco on the TOS bridge, and he's sitting there using the controls, and you saw the thing acting like, modern technology today. He was just hitting this one button, and it was scrolling the screen down and stuff. Now, we never saw that on the actual TOS Star Trek, but it was explaining that these buttons are actually doing more than we think.
Well, you know what? Maybe the whole idea of 23rd century was very Art Deco. I mean, Dax talked about 24th century designs. Those tricorders that Spock had were bigger, but they may have been more like the Next Generation ones than we thought. Yeah. They just, like instead of seeing all these occultograms plain Jane like you would in Next Generation, Voyager, DS9, whatever, there would be a skin. Like on a computer, you have different skins you can pick for your tablets and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe what we see in those blocks are just a skin.
Yeah.
And maybe when Spock stares into that blue thing, he's seeing octograms.
Oh man, that makes me think of something. Remember when Dax was sitting there saying, "Oh, I remember this era and everything," and
right, she's saying, "I love the design."
She had to have been in Starfleet, or at least the Dax had to have been serving in Starfleet in the 23rd century. If people actually did
wasn't she the gymnast at that time, Emily?
Yeah, she was. I can't remember which Dax she was.
She knew Leonard McCoy from a gymnastics competition she saw on Earth.
Yeah.
And the True often have involvement with Earth over the years, I guess. So she probably knew Starfleet people coming in and around with the buns and the mini skirts and all that.
She probably never got a chance to meet them when they were around, but she was around. I mean, the Dax symbiont was around during the 23rd century and actually probably served in Starfleet.
Wouldn't it be interesting if we go back to the Enterprise C time and there's some retro nouveau artists? Because if you notice, Captain Garrett had a very 80s TV mom kind of haircut.
Yeah.
That long page boy. So maybe just before TNG, maybe there was a retro 80s thing.
Yeah.
Where, it was really posh for Starfleet officers, male, to have Kaja Gugu haircuts or something. Who knows? Yeah. Or, just 80-fy everything because it's retro nouveau or whatever. Maybe we've had another thing like that. I would love to explore, I would love to do an old TOS thing. Maybe, in some abstract fan fiction Discovery, they could talk about, hey, there's this designer who wants to go back 300 years to this look. Because we're going into this new age,
About Discovery, if they want to bring a character, why don't they bring the Dax character on Discovery as serving on the Discovery?
Dax, yeah, you just brought up another idea.
That would be an interesting way of introducing.
If they're saying Discovery is Prime, why don't they bring in that designer character who comes in and says, your looks are a little utilitarian. Get rid of that window on the bridge. Let's make everything very Art Deco now.
Yeah.
It'll lead us kind of into TOS.
I mean, yeah, you could bring that. I mean, there's characters you could bring in without having to screw up canon. But it was already shown that Dax symbiont had existed at that time period. Or
even still with a little Delta insignia, you shouldn't use that. You should use different insignias for all your ships.
Yeah, but they don't have to say it's Prime. They could still say it's an alternate reality. But we still have the Dax character in.
Well, yeah, the Dax, yes, they could do that in either way. I'm just saying that if you wanted to make Discovery Prime, you could bring in that Starfleet Art Deco character to kind of bring the TOS look to life.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, for all we know, Spock might press some little button and get rid of those blinky colored lights, and there could be octograms under there.
I mean, maybe Discovery would be like the only ship that looks the way it does, and then they just,
But then again, that's not even, I don't know what that is. I can't consider that Prime or anything. But I'm just saying that, so yeah, I mean, on the TOS bridge, who knows? There might be some little button you push, and those blinking lights turn into ocograms, and we don't see them.
Yeah.
Or either that, or it might be primitive ones.
Yeah.
So who knows? But I can't believe that Spock's staring at blinking orange lights and saying, "Oh, I'm detecting a plasma-based life form" or something.
Yeah.
I don't, unless, or maybe in TOS, did they communicate in deep code or something?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, okay, this blinking light means that. I can't imagine it.
Yeah, because remember Spock used to wear that thing in his ear, like Uhura used to wear.
Right, he's a little thing he put up in his ear, yeah.
So I think they explained that he was actually able to understand computer, the beats and all the stuff from the computer. He could actually translate that through that earpiece, so he got the information quicker than if the captain would have to read it.
Well, they had those big, they looked like clipboards where they had like tablet pads, I guess, early pads.
Yeah. They never really showed, what they kind of look like those Etch-a-Sketch things with a thing around it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, who knows, Kirk was saying that, oh, stop mission, I gotta draw my cow on my Etch-a-Sketch. I put a little barn next to it. Hold on, Mr. Trelane, I gotta draw me a little barn next to the cow. Yeah. No, it's a funny joke about the extra sketch, but anyway. So, I messed up. I got to erase this up. Now what do you want? I mean, there's a skit right there, But anyway, you said they didn't look like extra sketches, didn't they? I mean, anyway. So yeah, but with let's see, what other bridge? The Enterprise B bridge, I always felt like that was just like a typical Excelsior-y kind of bridge. Like an Enterprise A redress. Nothing really remarkable about that. I didn't remember anything.
I know a lot of fans didn't like it, but I thought that the Excelsior bridge from Star Trek 3 looked.
That was very unique. It was kind of almost TOS-ish.
Yeah, it did use some elements of that look.
Yeah, it was where everything was kind of blockier. It didn't have the touch panels as much. Yeah. And they had those screens on the top. And it seemed kind of big. Maybe it wasn't that big, but it seemed kind of large.
Yeah, it was wider and it streamlined more. Like
right, it didn't look anything like any other bridge I ever saw.
Yeah, and I don't know why they just didn't stick with that, but maybe because after they did the movie, they tore it all down, and then they probably had to rebuild another set for that.
And they just made it that kind of generic late 23rd century bridge.
Yeah, it was cheaper to just use what they had already.
Because I noticed that only the refit Connie had that long panel in front, where the Excelsior already had the next generation-y kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If I remember. So, other bridges. I'm trying to think. We never. Now, here's one thing. In Deep Space Nine, there was a starship called the Odyssey. It was a Galaxy-class ship, and they showed the bridge for a little bit in the view screen part. And it didn't. Yeah, and it didn't look anything like the Yamato or the Enterprise.
Yeah.
It had these long panels in the back with a lot of LCARs.
Sort of looked like they just took parts of other bridges or something like
that.
Yeah,
it was like everything was like a wall. That was like there was all this stuff on the wall.
It was just kit bashed.
I mean, like I said, it's almost like they had buttons way down here where you had to press them on the bottom. It was just weird. Everything was all a wall.
I guess they could say that they were in the battle bridge.
Maybe that's what that was, but the battle bridge usually was a little more utilitarian.
Yeah, or maybe that was an advanced battle bridge. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe, now here's one thing I wanted to ask you, and this is a technology that didn't exist anymore. If they had a battle bridge, did Galaxy-class starships have auxiliary control anymore?
That's a good question.
Because the battle bridge could theoretically do all that stuff.
Battle bridge would be the auxiliary control.
Right, because...
If that didn't work, the engineering would be the third,
Because, the Connie had it, but it wasn't a bridge, it was like a little panel in a room.
Yeah.
With a bunch of stuff on the wall,
Yeah. So I think that I guess you would consider the battle bridge to be your auxiliary bridge in case. What
about Excelsiors and Ambassadors? Do they have anything like that, like auxiliary bridges?
That they would still be using that auxiliary control room kind of technology there.
Now, Voyager, do they have anything like that, or is that too small and compact for a thing like that?
Voyager. I would think that engineering would probably be the go-to place.
Yeah, because didn't they do it where they control the ship through engineering somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, they had this problem. Like, what was it? What they do was like two Voyagers or something, and one was destroying the other one by accident. Or
wasn't it that weird split timeline one?
Yeah, it was like, remember with the Vidians or whoever the hell they were? The
Vidians created. Yeah. They kept splitting that ship apart, didn't they? They kept making all these two Voyagers.
Yeah. So they had to evacuate the bridge, and they went to engineering because the bridge was full of holes or something. It was
right. They had to go on the messed up Voyage. They had to go to engineering and control it. So maybe the auxiliary control was built into engineering by that time on smaller ships that didn't have battle bridges.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows? Maybe that's what it was like in the Enterprise D too. Maybe that giant. Remember that giant eye? Didn't they have like an eye in engineering, like a big eye-shaped panel?
Yeah.
Not like this kind of eye, but like the letter I, like an eye beam.
Yeah.
And maybe there was a little place that could control it from there. I don't know.
The one thing that really kind of bothered me about the engineering was, remember they had a problem with the warp core, and they had to crawl on the floor to get to it because it was sort of like way down low, and it's like, well, why would they have the core where you have to lay on the floor and get like trying to crawl under a car or something to fix the it's like they needed to lift it up so that way they can get access to the core.
Well, how engineering works is actually maybe a good topic for my next one because but as far as bridges are concerned, because engineering is a whole other topic for me, how engineering is laid out.
Yeah.
With bridges, I'm trying to think of any of the bridges we haven't covered. Deep Space Nine is I don't think that's a bridge, it's at the space station.
Yeah, it's just a control center.
Defiant is basically like a rounded triangle, isn't it?
I always figured that it was sort of like it was round on the front and it was squared off in the back, like
right. Because if you look at it in all the books, it's always like a triangle-y kind of thing. I don't know why they.
Long, just a long.
But it's not a round thing. It's a longer bridge.
Yeah, and it's compact where the walls are closer in on the sides, and your panels are right there along the sides.
Right. It's more. It's a battleship. It's designed like a battleship. It's more tactical.
Yeah, because they're not supposed to be on those things for years at a time. It's just to do one thing at a time, and that's it. So, and if you notice, the floors are flat. There's no levels like you see on most bridges where there's a step up, or a step down. It was just flat all the way from front to back, and so the captain's chair wasn't even elevated, but the captain's chair had two panels. Remember, two control panels next to where other chairs, the panels were on the armrest. On Cisco's, he had to have control panels on either side of him.
Well, there's one other ship that would have actually existed during the Enterprise C's era, if I look at it correctly in the timeline. The Raven, the ship that the Hansons were on. And that was, would you say that was a very large runabout, basically?
Yeah, it was bigger than a runabout. I wouldn't even know if that would be considered a Starfleet vessel. I mean,
right, it was just a spaceship. It had Starfleet-y kind of looking stuff.
Yeah, it was using some, the technology that Starfleet uses, but it was a civilian vessel, I think. And I'm thinking, why would they let two people in a big ship like that, or three people, because they had a daughter, why they would just allow them to go out there and mess with, one of the biggest nemesis of the Federation?
Well, I think the Hansons just win. I don't think they. I don't think they followed any route.
Yeah, and and it just. What chance did they have to come back from it? I mean, they were supposed to do something positive by bringing back information, but they kept pushing the envelope until they got caught. And it's like, it was a doomed mission from the get-go, and they just send them out anyway. I don't know.
Right. That's true. And 7 of 9 addressed that it was foolhardy. But
and at what point in the timeline did they send the ship up? Because the first time we see the Borg was, when Q what was the name of that? The Q.
Q-Who.
Yeah, Q-Who. Okay, and then we see it in Best of Both Worlds. So in between that, they had to send that ship out, right? Because they were trying to get information about the Borg. So in between that time period, it was a year, I think, and they send them out.
Right, exactly.
So how long were they out there?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
it seemed like they were out there for a long time.
The thing is with the Raven, though, what I was trying to get at was the bridge, if I recall, seemed to actually have a runabout-like window.
Yeah, it looked like they took a runabout and flipped it.
Right, but it wasn't a bridge per se. It was more like a control area. I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't have a captain's chair, but it had a helm navigation panel with no chair.
Like it was a civilian ship. It wasn't a Federation starship.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if it had any weapons per se. I don't.
I thought that they actually took the Defiant Bridge and redressed it.
Yeah, it did seem like it might have been a redress of the Defiant Bridge, but it was a. Yeah. Now, are we talking about Federation bridges or bridges? Period.
Well, just the Raven Bridge I'm talking about.
No, are we talking about in your bridge idea? Are we talking about just Federation bridges or bridges? Period.
Yeah, just bridges. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to bring up one of my. I always loved it. I'm sure a lot of people don't like it. It's a bridge we only saw once, and I just think it's a really cool bridge. The bridge on the Amar.
Oh, yeah, on the Klingon vessel.
I remember a friend of mine named Joseph, that was his favorite bridge in all Star Trek, Federation or anything. It's almost like Deep Space Nine, where it has all these angles and all these things, and it's this, and all these panels and all these weird shapes. It's the most unusual bridge I've ever seen.
It had, like, moving gunnery chairs, remember?
Yeah.
Track their target, the chairs would move. I mean, it was really intricate.
Right, yeah, because when you watch Klingon bridges, they always stereotype the Klingon bridge. It's always like this thing is falling apart with these kind of metally, holy things that, and kind of like, everything is kind of like corrugated iron.
Yeah, it's rusted looking.
Right, and you see smoke everywhere, like... It's just all. I mean,
it goes against the theory that they to be a Klingon warrior, you want to be at your peak. You want to have the best blade. You want to have the best weapon. Why would they have the shittiest ship?
You know, those are dark and there's like smoke in there, like they're exploding.
Like it should be like, like brand spanking new. It must be.
Well, if you look at the TOS Klingon aesthetic, I mean, look at what was Krug's ship have a name? The Bird of Prey from Star Trek 3.
The name of that bird of prey, I can't remember what it was.
They didn't say it in the movie, I don't think.
I don't know.
But anyway, that bridge design was again very elegant. It had this huge throne.
It was basically like a carry-on from the motion picture.
Right, it was like a discount motion picture, but the giant throne where
we
just sit
high over the
and this little tiny panel where Maltz and Torg.
Yeah.
As in, say the wrong thing, Torque, that guy. So, the Klingon sitting in front, so Maltz and all of them, they had that little panel, and they made it more Federation-y in Star Trek 4 when they refitted it on Vulcan. But I love that Amar bridge because it looks like this is like the best warrior bridge. You get all this stuff that does all these things. And
I mean, it's designed for combat. You know it's designed for that way just by looking at it.
And even in Star Trek 5, when Claw had his ship, now true, I always made a joke, the Claw was the hair metal Klingon.
Yeah.
Basically, this was Klingon meets Quiet Riot. That was the whole look of it. So, the big hair metal-y look and everything. But I think the thing with Claw's ship, it was a next generation aesthetic, but a little more cleaned up.
Yeah.
It wasn't as smoky in there. It wasn't as corrugated irony. Any of that periscope.
Yeah.
Whereas in the next generation, it looks like these ships are about 100 years old.
Yeah.
Can it work? If you press that button, will it go, all these crazy noises? I mean, it doesn't look like it's all that efficient. And even in Deep Space Nine, they're going against the Dominion. Mar talks on these ships, and they look like they're just not. Yeah, maybe it was a Praxis thing. Maybe after Praxis, they didn't have the budget for their ships anymore.
They introduced a brand new class of Klingon vessel during Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah, the Negvar?
Yeah.
And it still has a smoky bridge.
Yeah, but when you go inside the ship, it's still this rusted old bucket,
What is it? Maybe when the Federation Alliance happened, Klingon said, we decree that all our British are like buckets now.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, how can you say that this brand new looks like it's been around for 200 years? I mean,
right. I mean, the Amar looked way better than the Negvar bridge, and that was a fairly older ship.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, maybe, who knows, maybe that was Romulan. Maybe that was the Romulan aesthetic.
Yeah, I have a problem with that whole, thing. I mean, with the Klingon ships that we see in TOS, to me, they didn't look like birds. Okay, if you remember, they got the ball in the front and the big wide front. There was no bird look to it, but yet now they're saying that that was a design they got from the Romulans. That was actually a Romulan design ship, and they made it, and the Klingons got it, and they designed it. But it's like, how can that be? Because the Romulan ships look more bird-like. Right,
because they have the wings on the side. Yeah. The Klingon ships, I don't really know what they look like exactly. They have wings on them, but they're not bird-like. They're more like...
Yeah, the elegance wouldn't be there for a warrior ship. It would just be, a ship, and with weapons on it, tapes all around it. It wouldn't look nice. It would look hateful.
Now, with the Romulan ship, the TOS Romulan Bird of Prey, I'm just saying...
Yeah.
That always reminded me, back to Doctor Who, that always made me a little bit of the TARDIS somehow, and they had this big control panel in the center of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much all the stuff around, it was like this big thing in the center, and...
Yeah, I mean, talk about budget problems. I mean, it looked like they took a closet.
It was a little bridge, wasn't it? It was like a little tiny thing.
No chairs, no nothing. I mean, it was just a panel.
Didn't you say that you suspected those Bird of Prey were actually very small and dropped from other ships and didn't even have warp?
Yeah, that's how a friend of mine had explained it to me, was that, I don't know where he got it from. He might have read it out of a book or something, but this was back in the 80s. He said that they had Romulan drop ships that would take these warbirds and just put them in different sectors, and they would stay there for a while, and they'd come back and get them and bring them back home. And that's why they only had impulse drive and not warp drive. But I'm thinking, why do that? Why wouldn't they give them warp drive just the same? Why, that...
Well, those might have been very limited warp ships because they didn't seem quite as fast.
No, they weren't. I mean, because Scotty said that their power was just impulse. So how are we supposed to take that? Because they use impulse on the Enterprise, and that's supposed to be subwarp. And we know that to go faster than that, you have to use warp drive,
Well, I mean, who knows with that? Now, the Romulan bridge in the Next Generation era, those always seem to be a little bit Starfleet redresses. I don't know. I mean, they had some differences, but they seem to be redressing things by then. But we didn't see much of Romulan bridges, I suppose.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a better looking Romulan ship than.
Well, oh yeah, because they didn't have that little tiny confined area where they're all stunk up together.
They really put something nice together for that. That's my favorite Romulan ship right there. Is that big one there? You
mean the Warbird?
Yeah, I love that design.
The what is it? The Dia something?
The Derrida.
The Derrida, yeah. Now Ferengi bridge aesthetic. To me, the Ferengi bridge aesthetic seems to be more about Simon Says. Because you have that little tiny ball they always have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me, it's almost like one of those Magic 8 balls.
Yeah.
Like, I always feel like the Ferengi are like, all right, humans, I will tell you your fortune. That always seems like it's kind of that aesthetic. But the thing is, with their bridges, everything is kind of up. You don't see a lot of control. It's like an up thing. Everything's on a wall. It doesn't really, I don't know.
It seems like they don't need a lot of crew.
Right, because they're mostly salvage ships. They don't really.
Yeah. So I take from that maybe their computer technology is more advanced.
Right, because maybe they just bought it or stole it off somebody else. I don't know.
So that's why they don't need as many people on the
now,
bridge.
We'll accept the Borg because the Borg do not need a bridge. The Borg are another type of thing.
The cube is the engine room, the bridge, the everything, all in one.
It's like a beehive. The Borg's like a beehive is what it is with drones. So it's an insect colony. So I don't think that there's a central bridge. I think they're just drones, and the Queen is whatever. Yeah. So, but as far as other starships in the Cardassian bridges, now that's interesting. The Cardassian bridge reminds me more of the Amar aesthetic because the lines, go down more and they're more sleeker.
Yeah.
Cardassian bridges never looked musty or old.
Yeah.
They was well maintained. And remember the Amar had those beams that went down, and they had things that came down.
It was almost like what they used on the Enterprise E bridge. They had that same
right with the beams and everything.
Beams coming, yeah.
So
what would end up landing on somebody when they got blown off? It's like
and they had the wires in those.
Yeah, wires and circuits and beams.
Well, I'm wondering, maybe that was the problem with the Klingon ships later. Maybe they had to put those corrugated iron things to protect those circuits they had. Klingon circuits. This is the torpedo circuit. Kang in Day of the Dove mentioned the circuit on the Enterprise, the original Enterprise. So maybe we have to check the Klingon circuits. I guess Star Trek's all about circuits now, isn't it? At this point. So.
Yeah.
I mean, the TOS is just, actually, maybe sometime we ought to just take the high road, look online, and talk about the circuit thing on Star Trek and just do the whole thing. I mean, because I don't remember it at all in the Next Generation. I never remember Picard talking about circuits, except that one time.
Yeah.
The detector circuit.
Yeah, the detector. Yeah, instead of sensors, the detector circuit.
Okay, we'll use our circuit. It's like I was also watching Case of Armageddon, and I wanted to add with that.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that yet.
It's my Google Home.
Oh, okay.
It does that. Sorry. Anyway, so no. I didn't even say Google. Anyway, so the thing is that with your bridges, the Amar is my favorite Klingon bridge because it looks like something a really significant regal Imperial Klingon would want.
Yeah.
Instead of this old musty thing with these corrugated iron things and smoke everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't get the Negvar. The Negvar is beautiful looking, regal, and I mean it was getting weird when we got to the Vorsha.
Yeah.
Because the Vorsha couldn't have been that old.
No, it couldn't have been. I mean, I guess they were probably using it during the during the Enterprise C era towards the end.
Maybe, but it was a newer 24th century ship at any rate, and it was kind of musty in there still. So I'm wondering why in the 24th century Klingon aesthetics got to be corrugated iron beams hanging from everywhere, like almost like scaffolding.
Well, remember we was talking about how there's different families, on Klingon, the Klingon.
Right, that could be another factor.
maybe the Amar was from a rich family, a rich Klingon family.
A well-off family. I don't know how they would define that.
Maybe their ships were more elaborate, or something. Maybe they were more advanced than they had.
Or another thing is that maybe they were of a higher ranking status. Maybe if you're a lower ranking enlisted Klingon ship, you get bucket bridge.
Bucket bridge, yeah, you got. Yeah, you got.
Like, okay, we'll give you a nice ship. We'll give you a little bucket on it.
You got your choice bridge. You got A, B, or C. You get bucket bridge. It's like buying a coffin. You get your hefty bag all the way up to the elaborate.
Right. It's like, maybe it's like a car. Like, like I said, if you're driving, you usually don't give a teenager, a Peugeot or a Camaro.
Yeah.
Usually give them an older, I wouldn't say Yugo, but some older, like a Neon or something like that. Some older, or like a Ford Escort, something like that.
And that's why I think that the Klingon ships ought to look modular and not sleek or anything like that, because it would be like that. People would, because of the family status thing, they would buy what they could afford.
I have the Vorsha Playmates, and that's one of the best toys I've ever seen. It looks exactly the way it should.
Yeah.
Everything's perfect. Now, when they made the model of Vorsha, the front came off.
That's right, it did, yeah.
It didn't come off very well. It's kind of loose, but it came off. I was wondering if that bridge module, which kind of laid on top, could come off. Could have with an egg bar, too.
I don't even know why. I'm trying to remember why they had make that come off. Maybe it was some kind of an escape thing or something. I don't know.
Maybe, but with the bridge, I'm wondering if maybe certain fleets of Klingons or something, like you said, where we'll give you the old bucket bridge from 100 years ago, and then we'll give the other Klingon this really posh bridge. So there may have been really comparable. Who knows? Maybe the Klingon Empire had bridges with some giant wood panel thing behind them too somewhere.
Yeah,
well, not wood, but
it'd be interesting to see that, how that plays out with the Klingon society.
The elite warrior classes. Every time we saw a Klingon bridge, it was always this old bucket thing.
Yeah, they all look the same. There's nothing different about one ship to the other.
The Federation bridges always look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even Romulan bridges kind of look a little different.
Yeah, they do. You look at the Enterprise D bridge, and you go to the Excelsior bridge, you go to the, Miranda class bridge. They have differences.
Well, like the Dideridax, the Romulans even, and when you first see it, it's like this big yellow thing behind them. They're sitting on two chairs.
Well, you know what it looks like? It looks like they're sitting in a hallway, and the hallway goes way, way...
Yes, that's an odd thing. I wonder what that is. That's
the tail end of the ship. It's way back there, and you see these people walking around, and it's like, how are you supposed to give orders to people way back? Like, launch, start the RV. What the hell? The bridge was huge. It was like an auditorium, like you're walking into a church. It was like...
You know the yellow thing behind him?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was like a light or something like
that. Right, you saw Romulus walking around way in back.
Yeah, if you look at on the neutral zone, that's the time we first see
right.
And they're talking to the two Romulans sitting in the front. If you look way in the back, you'll see all these tiny Romulans way in the back walking around.
Well,
like, holy Jesus.
Unless maybe that's like the epic Romulan bridge is like 100,000 meters long. And, it's like, oh, can you beam over here so I can talk to you? Or I don't know.
Beam up here like
Maybe that's one of the only bridges in Star Trek that actually has several transporter coordinates. Like, we'll just beam you from one part of the bridge to the other because the bridge is like a whole part of the deck.
Well, it would take forever to walk the length of it. So, yeah.
It wouldn't be very efficient. Unless they just mixed a lot of stuff in there. Because if you remember on Enterprise, they kind of integrated this engineering-like table way in the back.
Yeah.
But still, it wasn't that huge.
Yeah, at first they didn't have it, and then they put it here. So, yeah.
But imagine if the Enterprise D, which had a pretty big bridge, imagine if you've seen the concept designs for the Next Generation, they had a cafeteria in it.
It was big.
It looked like they had like a cafeteria in the top, like it was college or something. Almost like, oh, okay. Well, wait for the Romulans to go. Let's go up and get a lunch or something. It just had that vibe to it. They had chairs in the corners and everything.
Yeah, I mean, they had a second floor. It was 2-floor bridge is what it was. I mean, that's where they got the idea for the wharfs.
Right, and they had a conference room in one of them. They had a conference room.
Exactly. And they had a big table at the bottom where the captain, the first officer, Council Troy, it was like the conference table was in front of the captain's chair on the bottom floor. You know,
it was an honest looking thing.
Yeah, and then the front was just this great big window and then a hallway connected on either end of it.
Actually, that would have worked well for Picard. My grandfather-in-law, he never liked The Next Generation much because he said that, why is Picard always calling a meeting? You know, he liked Kirk going down there and beating everybody up. So, you know, I think maybe they anticipated with The Next Generation that Picard would be all about meetings. Which
if you spent any time in the military, like I have, before they do anything, they have a meeting.
Exactly. And I think, like I said, this guy was thinking of them being cowboys.
Yeah, just to start your day. They have their coffee, they sit down at a table, and they say, this is what we're going to do.
So that's not that weird. That is not weird.
It's not weird. That's what you're supposed to do. Everybody in your staff has to be on the same page when they start the day. You know,
so they were trying to bring that into The Next Generation by having these conference tables everywhere.
When I worked at Ames, when I worked at the department store, before we started our day, we sat down with the boss and, you know, all the assistant bosses, and they said, we need to do this, and this today for the, you know, we had a sale. There's always a meeting. There has to be a meeting, you know, and if there's a problem that comes up and it's going to put a monkey wrench into the whole thing, then you have everybody come back together. And I hear this all the time when I go into Walmart. Oh, head staff, please come to the, you know, they want everybody in because they have to change
the
thing. So that's not unusual. That happens all the time.
I don't know if the conference lounge would have good right in the front of the bridge, though. I mean, it may have been better just right where it was on Enterprise D.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like where the conference room ended up, and right.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well. But like I said, I think that when I was talking about my step-in-law, his thing was that he was thinking of Star Trek as more of that wagon train and that cowboy thing, because Trek was really more into the cowboy logic.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, you know, people making comparisons, and they like this about the old one, or they didn't like this about, you know, I understand that. I do the same thing with different Batman movies. Okay?
Right. Well, like I said, it doesn't matter to me. Picard's vibe was more official.
Yeah, it's just different styles of how they did things.
I mean, if you look at Janeway, even she usually starts out with some sort of meeting. Even in TOS, in Friday's Child, when they're talking about the Capellans, Bones is briefing him at a conference table.
Yeah, exactly. That's an instant right there where you're starting your day. This is what we're going to do today.
And they actually started it with a meeting, if I recall, didn't they? They started the episode with a meeting about the Capellans and Bones' experience with them.
Yeah. But I guess people feel like they shouldn't have to put that into the story. That slows it down. You know, take it out. Just jump right into
you know, some people may forget the meetings that were in the original show. Sargon, there was this big meeting about Sargon.
Oh, yeah. Kirk had to sell it there. You know.
I mean, he had to go on the bridge and start posing heraldically.
Yeah.
He was in the conference room doing all his, this is our business.
Yeah. I mean, because everybody didn't want to do it, but he had to convince the crew that it was right.
Right, so it was his big moment. And it worked better in a meeting because it was like, this is a big moment, you know. So it was more drama, I think, in the original series, where Picard was like the big boss man. He'd sit down and say, we got to negotiate with 100 people at this conference table. And it just seemed more official.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it's like Janeway. She had to officiate all the time in her big, what did you call it? That big conference that looked like a letter.
Yeah, it was on the side of the bridge there. It had that table with the round end there.
Right, it looked like a T or something.
Yeah, something like that. It was weird, you know.
It was like a long, like a hook or something. It was a weird.
Yeah, it didn't seem, nobody, wherever they sat, it didn't look like they belonged there. It just, it was like, you know,
I mean,
on the edge.
I mean, imagine if somebody designed a conference room where the table was one big giant blob with no defined shape. Like, let's have them all sit in some weird objet d'art chair and
there's something about having a round table or something where there's chairs around it.
Right, like the Next Generation one is curved, but it sort of has a shape.
Yeah, it's a shape that we use now. I mean, it's a rectangular shape, sort of, but it's bent a little bit. But yeah, chairs are around it. One end is the captain, and you know, so you see a definition there. But on the Voyager bridge with the conference room,
it's like a T or a hammer or something.
Yeah, it's like, huh? You know, like, it's this to the table looks like that. I mean,
But like I said, I'm trying to think of another bridge that we haven't covered in Star Trek that would be important. Do we ever see a Vulcan bridge in Enterprise or anything? We saw ships, but I don't remember seeing a Vulcan bridge.
Vulcan bridge. Only on the view screen, I think. We only see it.
Yeah, and I don't remember much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, they didn't really get into too much detail with that.
And
that would have been interesting because, you know, the Vulcan ships themselves were an interesting design.
I'm going to go off on a little side thing here with some alien races, because when Star Trek the magazine first came out, they were obsessed with insurrection stuff. And the insurrection introduced this race we only saw once, one of these one-show races, called the Sona.
Yeah.
Who were actually also the Baku. That's another story. That's what the movie was. But their ships were interesting. Again, they had a Doctor Who-y TARDIS with the big circles in the back of it. But instead of the captain's chair, they had this big loungy throne.
Yeah, it was a big, wide, you know, recliner.
Yeah, and I always figured, why do these people need something like that to sit in?
You know, I don't know. It's this hierarchical thing, you know, where he's like the king, you know. Or
I mean, Klingons have a giant thing that looks over everybody else, but they don't have the Klingons sitting in this gilded throne.
The Romulans don't do that.
No, maybe the Ferengi might. I could see the Ferengi, like, maybe the Grand Nail is a private ship where he sits in this giant Latin throne or something.
That's stuff full of stuff. I mean, they just sit wherever they can sit, you know.
Well, right, I mean, for all you know, the Nagus might have some private yacht we don't see, and when he travels around to do business on the planets, he's in this giant gilded throne.
Yeah, maybe that's, you know.
I mean, the Ferengi, I see them being very officiated with those ships and everything being very big and, you know, that kind of thing.
I just envision the inside of those ships being stuffed full of stuff.
Well, the Marauders, yeah, because they're pirate ships. So
like the inside of the hoarder, you know, when they show the hoarders on TV there, and their houses are filled to the rim there with stuff that you say, why are you collecting that? So if you go inside of a Ferengi ship, it would be
right, kind of pirate booty sort of thing. Yeah.
And the ships are so heavy, it takes them forever to get home. So, you know, Warp 5 is the fastest they can go.
You know, the one thing that's interesting, not the big one, but the little Jem'Hadar ships, you know, they did something with those that you mentioned could be a good possible thing for future Star Trek series, taking, like, the next generation type thing. These interfaces, these VR interfaces.
Yeah. Well, they don't need a view screen. They just see.
Right, and you mentioned that as being a good possible direction for Starfleet to kind of use in the future.
Yeah, I mean, but they probably wouldn't have them wear anything like that. You know, I just...
like 25th century Bluetooth, maybe? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. That, you know, that would be sort of futuristic, but, you know, at the same time, you know, I don't think they would make it so obvious that they have to wear something.
Right, it would probably be more like a little, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, I think we mentioned this before, Kirk in the motion picture novelization, not the movie, had some implant where he could interface with Spock or something.
Yeah, well, they were saying it. Yeah, you're talking about the book,
right?
Where Kirk was contacted by Starfleet through some kind of device that officers, admirals would have, you know, so he could see the report, which was actually the transmission from the probe that was following the AMAR and the Klingon ships that were attacking V'ger. And basically, after he saw what happened, then they say, well, you need to report to Starfleet, you know, ASAP, basically. So, yeah, it was sort of like a daydream that happened in his mind that he saw that report. That's how it happened.
And like I said, that's way too meta content for TOS era, of course, even movies. So
yeah, they dropped it because audiences would get it. You know, it's just, you know, it was way too advanced of a thought thing for people to get, you know.
But they left it in the book for some reason.
That's the problem Gene Roddenberry was trying to avoid, that he learned, you know, the cerebral thing, the cage. That they rejected that episode because it was too cerebral. It was too much of where the mind went. So
right.
I think you learn from that if you're going to do a Star Trek episode, you're going to have to kind of stray away from that.
So you think that Gene may have gotten a little more conservative in his thinking after that, worried about if his shows had too much meta content, they wouldn't.
He learned as he went, I think, because, you know, there's one thing to write a story, but to write a story and have it become a TV episode is a whole different thing. Because you have to drop a lot of things out of your book if before it becomes a
right. You have to appeal to a much broader audience in your time. So,
exactly.
but with the bridges, I'm trying to think. Aside from the Jem'Hadar bridges, they were very small and Romulan Bird of Prey like, if I remember. But they just had those interfaces that were interesting.
Yeah.
Did we ever see a Breen bridge? We saw Breen ships, but I don't remember seeing a Breen bridge.
That's a race that they never really did a whole lot with, and they should have, because I would have liked to see more about them.
We heard them mentioned in The Next Generation and did not see them until DS9.
Yeah.
And then they were just basically spacesuits.
Yeah, and their ships were weird. I mean, it's like
they look like some sort of symbol.
Yeah, like the Russian, the hammer and
the hammer and the sickle. They look like a symbol. They didn't look like a ship. They were odd looking ships, really.
Yeah.
So we don't know if they had a defined bridge or not.
Yeah, and it was just. And I was just like, well, we ought to do more with the Breen and find out their home world and everything.
I heard somebody say the Breen were a discount version of the Stormtroopers from Star Wars. I don't think so, but
no, I got a feeling there's more to it than that.
I'm going to get off on a little sidetrack here, but this has slightly to do with another bridge. Do you remember a species? I don't think they get a proper name in Voyager. They tapped into the Doctor's holographic matrix to get information about him.
Oh, trying to remember
when he was daydreaming.
Trying to remember the
on Voyager. The episode was called Tinker Tanner Doctor Spy.
Okay, I remember the name. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, the reason I'm saying this is because when I watched Doctor Who, I never noticed it before. Those aliens were complete Sontarans.
Yeah.
They looked like potatoes. They had Sontaran outfits. And years later, I learned there was a bit of a ruckus about that. Like, you just totally plagiarized Sontarans. But,
yeah.
Because they look, if you look at them, they look exactly like Sontarans from Doctor Who. Same potato-y look, same foily outfit.
About the creatures that they have the heads look like Mr. Potato Heads, and they were
yes, they were Sontarans.
They were
Doctor Who Sontarans. They totally ripped them off.
Yeah, okay.
They didn't change a thing.
Yeah, okay, I get it now.
And the thing is that their bridge, interestingly enough, we saw more bridge from these potato people that had no name than we did the Breen.
Yeah, I remember watching an episode of Doctor Who, the newer Doctor Who episode.
Yep, Sontarans are in that, and they look exactly the same as those potato people from Voyager.
It was funny, and I say, that's the thing I like about Doctor Who is they don't try to take it too serious. They leave an element of something to laugh about in there,
Right, they kind of lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, it never did since the beginning of Doctor Who. They never really made things too serious. They left room in there to laugh a bit about stuff, and that I always like that about Doctor Who.
Right, Doctor Who left that wit in there, which is good. Yeah. And Star Trek, of course, has its wit, but anyway, back to the bridges. Those are, I mean, to me, people often compare Star Trek to Star Wars, but since I've watched a lot of Doctor Who, I notice more Doctor Who Star Trek elements together. I mean, there's certain ethical codes that are similar. Yeah. It's a different setup because you have one Time Lord who has more capability and one human traveling with them.
Yeah.
Rather than a crew, but
yeah, I don't understand why Trek fans have to get into this thing about Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah, because Star Wars and Star Trek, I don't consider them really the same thing per se.
They're not. I mean, it's apples and oranges. I mean, you can't just say, oh,
the galaxy far, far away, right?
Yeah, you can't use the same way we measure Star Trek and apply it to Star Wars. There's, Star Wars technology is way different than Star Trek technology.
I mean, I haven't read the Star Trek X-Men book. There was a book they wrote, but if you put X-Men into the context of Star Trek, that could be the eugenics wars.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it that way, that could be like a eugenics wars thing.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the nasty X-Men were working for Khan. I don't know. I mean, maybe that was the superhero people were like, the mutants were some kind of eugenic war thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Timeline's about right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you could fit that in the universe. The Star Wars and Star Trek, they're two separate sci-fi franchises and very separate.
Yeah.
They're not in the same time, not in the same universe. They don't even look alike.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to like one more than the other. You like them for what they are, basically.
To me, it would be like comparing Hill Street Blues to NCIS.
Yeah, like two different cop shows.
I mean, they're different vibes.
Yeah.
You just...
yeah.
Different places, different times, different
and you
worlds.
can like them both for different reasons. You don't have to take one and say, well, I don't like it because it isn't like this show. It isn't like that.
Right. I mean, nobody compares ER to Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
They're both different ideas.
Yeah.
Or Grey's Anatomy to House. I mean, you don't really compare those.
This problem happened with George Lucas when Battlestar Galactica came out, and Lucas, I think they were trying to sue the creators of Battlestar Galactica, saying, "Oh, you're trying to copy Star Wars." Well, if you remember the original Battlestar Galactica, yeah, it looked on the surface it looked kind of Star Wars, but the story was all different.
Right, it was not close to Battlestar Galactica at all.
It had absolutely nothing at all to mirror Star Wars. It just, and for Lucas to get paranoid and think that his franchise was in danger because someone was copying it was ludicrous.
Well, I mean, like I said, we had all kinds of different sci-fi franchises in the 70s. We had Battlestar Galactica, you mentioned. We had Space 1999.
Yeah.
I think there were some others.
Yeah.
There was a Buck Rogers reboot.
Yeah, Buck Rogers. Yeah.
Which is a really old thing, but they rebooted it. I know Westworld's a series now, but there was a movie in the 70s. Yeah. Westworld. Wasn't there a series that Gene Roddenberry's working on called Genesis something?
Yeah, it was. I never watched any of it though. It
didn't come. Did it come on, or was it ever made?
I think it was made, but I didn't watch it. I remember that they had it on TV, I think, but it
had like a train or something. I guess some kind of train system.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, I don't think they ever produced it. Maybe they didn't. I don't.
I think it's on. I see it on Netflix once in a while. It pops up on there, but I never watched it. I just, there was other things I wanted to watch on there, and I just skip it.
Yeah. But like I said, Star Trek Bridges. I don't usually use the animated series as a criterion, but the Klingon bridges on that have the effect of that Romulan bridge. You see this thing behind the Klingon captain, who's always some generic Klingon they give another identity, and behind them you see all these Klingons walking way back.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm wondering if there was this concept that Klingon and Romulan ships had these enormous bridges, and everybody was just running around and back.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's just, but I guess like you said, it's it's depending on what fan you talk to, whether they want to consider that canon or not. That's
right. That's a bit dicey in that area.
Yeah.
Now, runabouts are an interesting thing because they're considered starships classification-wise, but they actually look more like shuttlecraft in the sense that there's no bridge. It's more like a flight deck or a cockpit.
Yeah, and the back is sort of like a lounge or something like that.
Right. It's a starship, but it's a shuttlecrafty starship.
Yeah, I guess it's meant to do something simple, and it has to be done at a far distance or something. I don't know. I don't even know if the Enterprise D ever had any of those.
Well, it did in Timescape.
Yeah, we get the impression that they had one, but that was the only time they ever had it.
Was it a runabout that was from some other place returning to?
That would have been an episode where they could have used the captain's yacht.
Right, that captain's yacht that was like a little teardrop.
Yeah, but you see, the problem was they wasted their money making the runabout thing, and they didn't think, oh, wait a minute, the captain has a yacht. We could use that.
When they going to use the captain's yacht in Samaritan Snare when they went with Wesley to have his heart transplant thing done?
Well, it was one of the older shuttlecraft.
Right, they did. But weren't they going to use the captain's yacht in that originally, too?
They could have, because it was quite a trip, I guess, where they were going.
I read somewhere they were going to, but they decided on an executive shuttlecraft, whatever that is.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I always liked those shuttlecraft than the ones they ended up
Yeah,
using.
I did. I just don't know why they call it an executive shuttlecraft. To me, they're all shuttlecraft. I don't know why they call them executive.
You're right. They could have used the yacht for that particular episode. That would have been perfect for that.
Because the one thing about it, I'm trying to think of other starships that had bridges. The captain's yacht on the Enterprise E, would you say that was kind of a runabout-y size ship or a little bigger?
I think it was probably about the size of a runabout, just not as wide.
Because that, too, had a little cockpit. It didn't have a bridge.
Yeah, it seemed like a one-panel kind of control system, and, everything else is just for luxury, basically, yeah. I think it had 2 decks on it, if I remember right.
Equinox. I wanted to mention that bridge. Basically, scaled down Voyager.
Yeah.
Like they just stripped out a lot of the because the Nova class is really small, right?
Yeah, I always thought the bridge was too big for the for the Equinox that they used on that episode. I was like, whoa. I mean, if the ship is only got 5 decks and that bridge looks like that, I mean, there's not much room for anything else on that ship. I mean, the engine room was basically right 1 deck down behind them. I mean, it was like
because it's way smaller than Voyager. You can see that it's way smaller than Voyager. So
yeah,
and
I don't think it was any bigger than the Defiant.
Now, here's my question about the Oberth Bridge. Would you say that was a very interchangeable? Because I've seen so many different Oberth variations on the bridge.
Yeah, they changed a different. They got to use a different one on Next Generation.
The Grissom seemed to be Connie redress to me.
It is. I mean, they changed the upholstery to the chairs. They and the lighting, I guess they changed around. I'm trying to think now, Star Trek 3, when they used the Grissom in there. Yeah, it just seemed like there's less on that bridge than there was on the refit Enterprise. So
now, here's my question: when we saw the TOS and we saw episodes like Ultimate Computer or Omega Glory or any episode that involved another Connie, when you go on the bridge, they always seem to be the exact same bridge.
Yeah, just colored different. Like the
right.
lighting is different. Yeah.
Do you think they replaced the bridge modules then, or do you think each ship had just a singular bridge that couldn't be replaced?
Are you saying were they interchangeable?
Yeah, could the Connie have a different looking bridge on different ships?
Why would they have different looking bridge? That's a good question.
Well, because in Next Generation,
remember on the Lexington, Wesley's command chair had a higher back on it. If you remember.
Yeah, maybe they can customize it a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, maybe it was just so the people knew it wasn't the same ship. I don't know, but to explain why they did, or what, try to fit logically into the story, why it would look different. I would think it was just maybe a modification or an evolution or something.
Maybe I had a bad TV, but when I first watched the episode Contagion, where they showed the Yamato's bridge, where Captain Varley is talking to Picard about the Iconians and everything,
yeah,
I swear that wraparound security council on the Yamato is green marble. Maybe I saw it wrong. It looked like it was green marble rather than the wood frame. I'm wondering if they had subtle design differences on the Galaxy class, too. I don't know.
Well, you got to remember, though, the Enterprise was always considered the flagship. The flagship always has to have the most modern technologies and the most modern design applicable to it, which is weird. They would send the flagship out on a 5-year mission because you would want to keep the flagship close to home so you can always keep it updated. But to send it out for 5 years and it's constantly having to be upgraded, I mean, it just, there's too many sidetracks. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying that some of the Galaxy class starships might not have been as sophisticated as the Enterprise D?
Well, like I said, the Enterprise D would have been the flagship. But
I mean, the Yamato or the Odyssey, or wasn't there a ship called Adventure eventually?
Yeah, I think that was in the battle with Deep Space Nine, where they had.
Yep. So those ships might not have been as fancy as the Enterprise D. You don't think, in terms of bridges?
Probably not. Yeah. But
the Yamato looked like it was the same, because when they went on that fake Yamato in Nagilam's cloud thing, it seemed to have the same bridge. Although it could have just been a fake Enterprise D. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Yet
in Contagion, the security council seemed to be marble behind Varley. So.
Yeah. Huh.
But who knows? They might have similar bridge designs. Just like, for example, the Yamato might have had the same basic bridge layout as the Enterprise D, just not carpeted.
Yeah, it would probably not as aesthetically, looking as it,
But similar design. I don't think they make starships all that different in the class. They have certain.
I mean, it was clear that all the Galaxy class ships originally were all sent on the same mission to explore. Basically, that's what they were designed for.
And there weren't that many of them. Was there a Galaxy? Do you think, like a Starship Galaxy?
Yeah, that was probably the prototype, and they probably didn't use it. They probably just left. That was remember when Geordi had was using the holodeck, and he had to go to using technology to help.
Right, with Leo Brahms. They had an incomplete Galaxy class ship. Do you think that might have been the Galaxy prototype?
That was probably the Galaxy. That was probably the Galaxy they were making at that time. Yeah.
So the Galaxy only was a functional ship, or just like a prototype ship.
Yeah, they were probably just keeping it, around so they can, experiment with it, so they could see if it worked, and they didn't use the same thing on all the other Galaxy class ships.
Well, now the Excelsior, they named a class after it, the Excelsior was originally just a plain old prototype, right?
Yeah.
But they decided to design a class after it and name it after that prototype.
Yeah, every ship that looked like that, that's what they usually do. Any prototype ship like the Defiant, all the other ships that look like the Defiant are called Defiant class.
So you think the original Connie was called the Constitution?
You talk about the Enterprise?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it was 1700, if I remember right. So that would have originally been an NX.
It got weird with NX, didn't it? Because NX is an experimental designation used by the Navy, and then in Enterprise they called it the NX class.
Yeah,
which got a little weird.
That they screwed up on that because it's not a class; it's a prototype.
It's a designation.
And then, but when they went and they named the next ship NX-02, I was like, well, you can't have two prototypes that look
right, exactly. What I'm wondering is why didn't they just do what FASA did with Refit Connie and call it the Enterprise class?
Yeah, they could have had the NX-01, then the next one would have been NCC-02, would have been the next variant of the
right.
They were calling the NX class. That would have been, what was the name of that second ship? The
Columbia.
Columbia, yeah. So that Columbia would have been NCC-02.
Unless they were thinking of the NX as, I don't know if you can imagine, an experimental fleet.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work, but, I mean, maybe they figured this a few ships NX. I don't know if there were many of those type of ships. Because I don't think they were mass producing them.
It makes more logical sense the way I laid it out, how it would start. You have the Enterprise as your prototype.
But, like at Starfleet, I don't think they were the NX being mass produced, or were they just like being made for specialty purposes?
Well, I think during Enterprise, all the ships with NX whatever, they were sent out just to explore. Basically, one ship wasn't enough because the Enterprise was always in trouble all the time. So they decided, well, we got to have more ships out there to cover each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
So they started to make more of them, basically. But like I said, they should have numbered them different because it didn't make any logic.
Wow. We got caught in quite a rabbit hole with this bridge and this rank thing, didn't we?
Yeah, we started off about bridge and positions and rank. And
we had two subjects, but I mean, it kind of interrelates because they don't use bridge ideas anymore. Yeah. Sometimes they use others, and then with rank, sometimes just progress. Like you said with Yeomans, they don't need them because they have computers to do that. And with all these different admiral ranks, there's a superfluous anyway, so they just admiral whatever, And Commodore and Fleet Captain disappear for the same reason you think Captain might disappear.
Yeah.
Because they're just condensing everything down. It's time, as they say on Trek yards, with technology, the whole thing is getting smaller.
Yeah. Well, they do Star Trek Online. I played it a little bit, Star Trek Online, when on...
you mean the computer game?
Yeah, I played it a little bit, and then it started screwing up my computer, so I quit playing it. But it was like, because it's such a big game. And, I was playing it, and there was other people playing it. I could see their ships going by, and I'd say hi, and they'd say hi back, And, they had some interesting-looking ships, but it looked like it was quite a bit leap ahead from Next Generation because the uniforms were different. The ships looked way different. And like you said, they were getting smaller. They still had some big ships, though. They had some huge ones in there, but there weren't too many of them. And it took a while when you play that game to get to the level where you could have a ship like that.
Right, because if I recall, didn't Star Trek Online basically replace the old StarTrek.com?
Did it? I don't know about that. No.
Well, the StarTrek.com, if it exists at all now, is mostly a merchandising place.
Huh.
Because, it used to have its own website, this huge Star Trek website. And I remember, I think they still post up, but they're mostly Star Trek Online now.
Yeah.
They mostly sponsor the game. Because Memory Alpha has all the stuff that StarTrek.com used to have.
Well, this is my question about Star Trek Online. What happens if they decide to shut it down? Everybody that's been playing that game is going to get screwed over. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to lose all the time they spent trying to play the game and the stories and all that. I mean, are they going to shut it down?
I really don't know. I mean, I hope they don't shut it down. I don't play it, but I hope they don't because I know that it's like World of Warcraft, with any big RPG online, if you shut it down, you've got a lot of people out in the dust,
Yeah.
But one thing, do you remember back in the late 90s, they had a CD-ROM kind of early Star Trek Online concept where you design starships and use them in a game?
I did buy something like that, and I was like, this is too boring. It was like, you build these ships and then you print them out, and it's like, okay, whoopee, and it's like, there's no fun. You don't get to play with it after you build it. All you do is you're just making sketches.
Right, and if I recall, I think I had that. I think it was called Starship Builder. If I recall what that was, they gave you a bunch of designs you could just kind of kit bash.
Yeah, kit bash, but, you don't get to really be creative enough.
Now, just to mention that before we leave, because I know it's been a while, if I remember the Deep Space Nine Dominion War, that seemed to be all about the kit bash. Some good, some weird. Like, the Centaur was good because it was kind of a shrunken Excelsior, as you said. It was kind of...
I didn't mind that. That one's still...
But then they did this thing, I don't remember the name of the class, where they had a Voyager saucer that they just grafted onto a Maquis bottom.
In the
These crazy nacelles on the bottom. It's just like this.
Yeah, and of course the scaling is off from the very beginning because
I don't know how big those Maquis ships are supposed to be.
Isn't that big, but obviously what they did is they went to a store, they bought 2 model kits, and they said, here, do something with that, and then they...
Now, those Maquis ships, would you say those are like civilian fighters?
I think they were probably originally just cargo transports, and then they put weapons on them or something.
Right, because on Voyager they call or DSN they call the Maquis ships glorified shuttlecraft. Yeah. So I don't even know they're much larger than runabouts. I don't think they're that big.
They look kind of primitive, though, in a way. I mean, maybe they might have been civilian craft or something.
Yeah, I don't think they look, but there's no way that bottom can fit on a Voyager saucer.
No.
I don't know how they did that.
No, that was too small for that.
Unless the Voyager saucer was really tiny, like a little miniature Voyager saucer. I don't know.
A lot of people think that Voyager is small, but you line it up with the TOS Enterprise, and it's big.
Yeah, it's as big as the TOS Connie. It's about the same, except it's a little different in the sense that there's more stuff on it.
Yeah.
So the crew is smaller.
Yeah, but Voyager is a big ship. I mean.
Yeah, it is. It's the same size as the TOS Connie, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's only got 150 crew, and I'm like, maybe there's a lot of computer automation going on.
Yeah, I wonder why that ship didn't have 300 or 400 people on it.
You could easily squeeze that many because they had more than that on the Excelsior, but it's just, yeah. I mean, people say, "Oh, that's a small ship," but you say, "Well, wait a minute. Now let's go back here and look at the TOS Enterprise, which was the length of an aircraft carrier." And you look at Voyager, and it's even longer than that. And I said, that's a big ship,
Yeah, Voyager would be like a light cruiser, right?
No, it'd be heavy cruiser. A light cruiser would be like the Miranda class or
the Nova. No, the Nova's not even that. The Nova's like a little science ship, so.
Yeah, and the Nova, yeah, would be what's less than a light cruiser, right? I'm thinking scout ship.
I guess what I can think about it is like you have the canoes at Old Town, or the kayaks rather.
Yeah.
You have the Loon, which is kind of the mid-sized one, and the little one called the Otter. I'd probably think of Voyager as being more like the Loon, and the Otter being the Nova class, basically.
Yeah.
Like the little runty starship that just does. I don't think it was meant for long-term missions. The Nova. They basically said so. But yeah, so I think basically Star Trek ranks and bridge designs changes to the purpose of time and what they're doing in a given episode.
Yeah. But
so I guess that's the conclusion. So anything you want to discuss on either subject, since we've covered it so thoroughly?
I think we covered a lot.
Well, anyway, we'll get back to it next time. I'm going to scan this video later because I think we got at least a few future subjects for me in here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll remember the circuit.
The circuit.
I want to get into that one because there's a running joke here, and I finally want to get down to the point of why is TOS circuit obsessed?
Yeah.
We're watching it, everything is circuit, and then
and wires and
right. And then you get into the next generation, you hear circuit once, and that's it.
Yeah.
You never hear in season 7, send me back to the Enterprise queue because I have to check the circuit. You don't hear that.
Yeah, if they slip it in, it's not noticeable. But when they use it, you could tell it was Gene Roddenberry writing the script.
Right, because he wrote a lot of TOS episodes, didn't he?
He did originally, yeah. But eventually, I mean, it was like the first, I think, the Cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before. You hear them use that a lot.
Because I noticed all the credits for the ones I was watching that circuits big in them, and circuits. He wrote Patterns of Force. You wrote that in season 2. again, they actually show physical circuits in a communicator, so I guess Gene Roddenberry felt that they should be using circuits. So anyway, but anyway, like I said, that may be my next one. I may really consider that because I'm gonna go online and do some crunching about what the circuit thing's all about. So anyway, see what I can find. We can speculate on it. But anyway, until whatever we do next time, this has been a big topic. Hope you enjoyed yourself, had some good information, had a good laugh as usual. So until next time, this has been Trek Prime. Live long and prosper, everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.